Welcome to Pack Talk Podcast, episode 86. Today we're talking about the dog's mind and understanding your dog's behavior. So this is a book written by Dr. Bruce Fogle, and we reviewed his other book, which is called The Cat's Mind, in episode 55, which continues to be one of our heavily listened to podcasts. It's one of the most fan favorite podcasts out there.
Yep.
So I decided that today we're going to just review a lot of my notes that I have in his book, The Dog's Mind. And in the past, we have reviewed certain chapters of this book in some of our podcasts that we did when we first came out with the podcast. So you can go back, listen to some of the original episodes. We'll be talking about this book in some of those episodes. But I think that now is a good time to review all the important information in the book all together, kind of like what we did in episode 55 with The Cat's Mind. In this book, it'll benefit dog owners, right? It's especially going to benefit dog trainers and dog breeders because this book has such in-depth information and analysis that he provides. It's just invaluable information. And unfortunately, today we won't be able to cover a lot of the detailed information. We're just going to be covering important notes. But if you find it valuable and useful, I do recommend ordering the book off of Amazon if you want to read the whole thing. And by the way, if you're on Amazon ordering the book, you might as well go to the Canine Revolution Apparel, the new store, and get you a Good to Go shirt.
Yep.
Also, while you're on there, and you could support the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
One other note about the book is that it was written in 1990. And although the majority of the information is still pertinent today, there's some information that I don't really believe applies with the additional knowledge that we have today. So some of it's a little bit outdated, but overall, the information still pertains today. So if you do get the book, just keep that in mind if you get it and you read it, that, hey, it was written in 1990. There's a lot newer information, specifically when he gets into the details of dog training. There's a lot more newer information out there about the science and learning theory of dogs and how they learn things and how you can teach them that I think might be a little bit better than some of the details that he goes through in his dog training chapters. But anyway, without further ado, we're going to jump right in. So first off, we're starting in the introduction here. In the very first sentence, he says, "There are millions of species of life that exist on Earth today, but of all these, the dog is almost certainly the animal that is closest to our hearts." Think about it. Most people today have a dog.
Yep.
You know, you go to apartment complexes, they all have dog parks. They even have dog baths.
Yeah.
That's how many dogs there are.
Yeah.
You know, every city or town you go to, they have a dog park. They have a dog bath. There's dog stores on every corner. With dog food, dog grooming, dog training. You know, there's tons of breeders out there now. There's tons of veterinarians out there now. I mean, it's insane.
A lot of money in the business, too.
A lot of money in the business, you know. So I would say that the dog definitely is the animal that's closest to our hearts. His other book, The Cat's Mind. Yeah. I mean, cats are super important in today's world, too. But I think dogs probably the number one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got dogs and cats.
That's right.
I would say probably 50% of at least the American population has dogs.
Yeah.
I would say.
At least 50.
Just off the top of my head.
At least 50%.
Yeah.
100%. All right. Next thing he says in here, "We have allowed them to share our dens, our food, our companionship. Surely the dog has become the one we should understand the best." So what that makes me think of is, obviously, the dogs are living with us. They're eating with us. We're giving them their food. We're also giving them some table scraps.
Oh, yeah.
We ain't going to lie. Everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
99% of people are
Definitely
doing it. Definitely me. We enjoy their companionship.
Yeah.
Hanging out with them. So why don't we understand them the way we should? Why do we treat dogs like humans? You know what I'm saying? That's what he says in his next sentence here. "We have a problem, for there is something about dogs that makes us irrational. Creating little furry people out of our canine companions, we lose the ability to understand them as they really are. We think of their behavior in human terms." So, I mean, that I think is like the root problem with most of the dog behavior problems that we deal with today and dog training problems that we deal with today, which is we're treating dogs like people. We don't really understand dogs as they should be understood, which is dogs being dogs.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Humanizing.
We're overly humanizing them.
Right.
You know, and we have a tendency to do that with a lot of animals.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But dogs, because they live with us, because they're, you know, always with us, they're part of our families for 99% of people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we tend to treat them like they're little humans when they're not.
Yeah.
And that's going to create lots of problems. That's why there's a big need for dog trainers, you know, in dog training, because of all the problems being created. And these problems are because we don't really understand the dogs like dogs.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And he brought this up in 1990. And back in 1990, it was not like it was today.
Yeah.
You know, there wasn't a lot of dog trainers out there. And I don't think there was as many dogs back then as there was today.
Or like
Definitely.
awareness of the dog, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Behaviors and stuff like that.
Right. Later on in the book, he says that he's talking about how dogs live. Pack dogs live in groups of mutually interrelated individuals who are each independent, but who work as a unit for a common good. They hunt in packs. They enjoy body contact and relish the companionship. So this part of the book, he's starting to set the scene of where dogs originally came from, so that we can understand them a little bit better. If we understand their history, we can understand their instinctual needs a little bit better, right? The way they operate.
Yeah.
And so he's basically saying that in the natural world, dogs live in packs, and they're independent individuals in the pack, but they all work together for a common good. Mm-hmm. Just like in your family, each human in the family is an individual, but overall that family is working together to achieve a common good that they believe in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I like that.
So dogs are the same way.
Mm-hmm.
He goes on to say, to understand the dog's mind, we must first briefly look at where the dog has come from, the wolf. So, I mean, again, that's the ancestor to the dog, the wolf. So,
Even the Chihuahua?
Even the Chihuahua. So if we can look at the wolf and we can understand the wolf, it helps us to understand the dog.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He says that the entire basis for its behavior is what it has inherited from the wolf. So in the book, he does detail a lot of things about, hey, the wolf did this. You can see it in dog behavior by looking at this, right? Different things that dogs are doing today.
Yeah.
But one of the most compelling reasons that we know dogs are from the wolf is because they have the same number of chromosomes, which he mentions in the book. Dogs have 78 chromosomes. Wolves have 78 chromosomes. So that right there is some pretty good evidence of, hey, that dogs actually did come from wolves, for people that want to dispute that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Scientific breakdown.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you just look at the history, which he goes through in detail in the book, if you look at the history of humankind over time, you know, first they lived like way back in the day, they lived with wolves. Wolves lived close to them.
Right.
Probably because wolves liked the food that the humans were giving them. And they took some wolves into their little camps and all that, started to have a relationship with them where they could help each other out. And then it just went from there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Interesting.
He goes on to say, we have improved some traits by sacrificing others, and in doing so have altered how the dog thinks. We have altered the dog's mind. In this section, he's talking about, hey, over time, man has bred the wolf down to the dog, to the current dogs, right? And doing that, we've improved some traits, we've sacrificed others, but overall, we've altered the dog's mind through this selective breeding process. So although the wolf is the ancestor to the dog, they're not 100% the same. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
The domesticated dog, if you just let your dog out in your backyard and it went off into the woods, right, it wouldn't survive like a wolf would. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
A little bit different.
Yeah.
All right. The last part of the introduction section that I wanted to mention was where he says, we can never get into their minds to truly understand how they think, but we can surmise in as scientific but also empathetic a way as possible. What that means is we have all this information about dogs, right? Scientific information, empathetic information, behavioral information, but we don't really know. what's going on in the dog's mind.
Right.
We're trying to understand as best as possible. We're making summaries and assumptions as best as possible, but you won't know 100% unless you're a dog.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Unless you're a dog that can, what do they call it whenever you come back into a different life? You know what I'm talking about?
Reincarnation.
Reincarnate.
Yeah.
You used to be a dog. You reincarnate into a human. Then you can explain it, you know? Something like that. All right. So in chapter 1, he's going to be talking about genetics, which genetics play a huge role in dog behavior. So I'm just going to go through some notes in this section. First off, he says, genetics left to nature selectively produces dogs that can find their own food, have the greatest potential to escape from danger, and that will breed with the largest number of females. In other words, a dingo-like dog. Our influence on genetic selection has been to produce dogs that are more manageable, more docile, easier to handle, more fertile, and that have a reduced fight or flight response. So like if we were to leave a dog to their own wild ways, they become like a dingo type dog, right? Focused on survival, focused on breeding so they can continue their bloodlines. But through our genetic selection, as we breed them, right, for certain traits, we want them to be easier to handle. We want them to be nicer to people, right? We want them to be able to have more babies because guess what? A lot of people are trying to breed their dogs that make money or whatever, you know? And we don't want the dog to like fight as much or run away as much. So we have reduced fight or flight response.
Right.
So again, just some of the examples that what we're doing as humankind, breeding the dogs, we're altering the genetics of the mind as time goes on, right?
Yeah.
Continuing on, he says, well, first of all, the next note I'm going to read about, before this note, he's talking about, hey, in a litter, there can be different types of dog personalities, right? And so he's trying to solve the problem. How can a litter of like 8 puppies, how can they all be so different? And so he writes in here, how then does each new pup differ from the others? If the replication system is so superb, how can one dog's mind differ from another? The answer is in the germ cells, the egg and the sperm. It is the intermingling and coupling of gene sites from both parents, gene sites with the same addresses but different contents, that allows for the emergence of different behavioral patterns in pups. And I remember when I first read this book, probably in 2016, 2017, it's when I was dealing with my own dog's issues. And I was trying to figure out why did this even happen, because he came from a litter. I don't remember how many puppies were in the litter, but you know, his brother, for example, like my dog Bane, you know, he was showing aggressive type behaviors towards people. But his brother could have been a therapy dog. He was so friendly with people. So I was trying to figure out, how is this even possible? You know, is the breeder a good breeder or not a good breeder for allowing this to happen in the bloodline? But there's so many different things that can happen when genetics are at play that it's super hard to predict these things, you know? And through further research, I mean, if you had a great grandfather in that bloodline that had some tendencies like my dog did, then it can show up like generations later, the genetics, the way they work out.
That's crazy.
So anyway, he's got a whole chapter in here dedicated to the genetics of the mind, but just know that there can be differences between puppies and dogs in the same litter. And it's due to the gene sites, the genetics, all the sciencey stuff. You know, if you're into that kind of stuff, you can read more about that in more detail.
That's crazy. How it works down generations. You know,
absolutely.
The genes.
All right, continuing on in the same chapter, the genetics of the mind. Another section I highlighted here was, theoretically, undesirable behaviors in dogs can be altered or avoided by careful attention to genetic influence. But, in fact, we still breed primarily for morphology and awfully simply for curiosity. By doing so, we retain within the genetic repertoire of the dog a genetic pool of what can only be described as harmful recessive genes. Genes that might, on one hand, create the morphology we desire, but that on the other hand might be linked with a deterioration in maternal care or a carelessness in hygiene or an increased tendency to snap at children. So what he's saying here is, because a lot of times we're breeding dogs for the way they look,
Right.
Aesthetic type things,
Yeah.
we're going to retain a lot of problem genes. Because over time, you can technically breed certain things out of a bloodline. But because we're so focused as mankind, as a society, on the way the dog looks,
Yeah.
we're retaining a lot of harmful genes. And this brings up another good point, is the damage that these backyard breeders or the not legit breeders, the damages that they're doing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? There's so many people out there that are just breeding dogs to make money, or breeding dogs because they think that, they like the dog or whatever, they like this breed or whatever. They're doing a favor for whoever.
Yeah.
They want their dog to have babies or whatever. They don't understand though what potentially they're doing, and they don't really care.
Or maybe the dogs they have that they are breeding, to have the puppies have these issues that maybe they don't even realize they're issues.
Right.
Right.
That's what I'm
and
saying.
they're just, yeah.
They don't even care. They don't know. They don't care.
And then you pass it on to another
Pass
person.
it on. Pass it on.
Yeah.
And what happens is, somewhere along the line, these dogs are causing problems for people. People are giving the dogs to rescues, shelters, and then it just creates a never-ending problem of there's more dogs, there's too many dogs than people need or people want, And then let's say more people want a dog. You got the adopt, don't shop train. More of these new people want dog. They want a certain breed. They go out to a breeder, so they're not going to the shelter. So then the shelter dogs are still there. There's more dogs coming into the shelter. So it's like a never-ending cycle.
Yeah, it's a tough problem.
Definitely hard to know what to do in that situation.
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the dog's mind.
Right.
So the next chapter is called The Brain, and several of the first chapters that he goes through, it goes into the detailed scientific explanation of what's going on in the dog's, body, scientifically, the anatomy of the dog, how things are working. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on that, but I do have some notes here in his chapter called The Brain, where he says, if we are to learn anything about the dog's mind by studying the dog's brain, it is this. If a young dog is superstimulated, if it hears loud noises, sees flashing lights, has to balance itself on an inclined plane for a few minutes each day when he is very young, he will grow up to have a larger brain with more cells, bigger cells, and more interconnections between them. It isn't just a matter of genetics, of instinct, of set patterns functioning. If a dog is deprived of stimulation, he will have a smaller brain. We can influence the development of the dog's brain. We can influence his mind by providing him with the best environment possible when he is a newborn pup. So to me, when I read this, in this book right here, as we'll get into, tons of information about puppies.
Yeah.
How to develop a puppy, how to raise a puppy. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But right here, super critical. If you can stimulate your puppy, its brain will develop differently. Its brain will be larger, have more neural pathways, more interconnections between it, and that makes your dog more prepared when it's older for different things that are going on. Right? If you have a puppy and you expose it to loud noises, flashing lights, having to balance itself on things, having to go up and down stairs versus carrying it up and down stairs, for example.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
These types of things help the dog develop on a whole nother level. And when they're older, right, they won't be scared of that trash truck. They won't be scared of that thunderstorm. They won't be scared of different things.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? They'll be more capable because their brain's bigger. They can handle more. There's more neural pathway connection. If you have a dog where it's basically just in your house all the time, you're carrying it around, because it's a cute little puppy, all that kind of stuff, its brain's going to be smaller. It's not going to be able to handle the stresses of life, and it has more potential to have serious behavioral problems as it continues to grow.
So early exposure to your dog
Right.
is going to in the long term help them grow to be a healthy dog with healthy habits and healthy traits.
Right. Which we'll get into later. We'll deep dive. He's got a whole section on puppies and what to do with them. And I've kind of taken that information into my own account as I've created ways to help puppies be the best they can be starting out as soon as you get them.
Yeah.
Or if you're a breeder. I mean, this information is super important because as a breeder, you should have those puppies until they're about 8 weeks old before they go home to their, people that are getting them.
Yeah.
So from 0 to 8 weeks old is critical, as we'll learn here shortly. There's a lot of stuff you need to do. And so if you're a breeder, you need to make sure you're incorporating this stuff into your system with your puppies to make them the best they can be for life. You see what I'm saying? The next chapter 3, he's talking about the senses, and he's given important information about how the senses feed the mind of the dog. So one thing that he brings up that we need to try and think about is imagining how the dog perceives and responds to life around him. Again, going back to the first sentence, understanding how our dog operates, trying to put ourselves in our dog's shoes, right? We can't think that they're sensing or receiving and perceiving information the way we are, because that's setting our dog up for failure.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We have to think about things on our dog's terms.
Yeah.
So the first sense that he brings up is touch. And he says, touch is the primal sense in dogs as it is in us. It is more important than any other sense for the development of the normal adult, and dogs that are deprived of touch will grow to become subordinate, fearful, and withdrawn. Stroking reduces the dog's state of arousal. The same thing happens to us too. Stroke a dog to which you have formed an attachment with, and your state of arousal will also diminish. So talking about stress, if you're stressed or excitable, petting, stroking, those types of things, those are going to diminish that arousal, that excitability, that stress. And I mean, doctors are even talking about this today, how it can help you reduce your stress overall, which is going to help you have a better lifespan, health span, because stress is one of the main things that puts our body into a bad state as far as longevity goes in long life, which we'll talk about in a future podcast coming up. But anyway, touch is being a primal sense in dogs. Dogs enjoy touch. Remember, they're pack animals.
Yeah.
So they like social contact, and, touch is one of those ways that we're going to contact with each other.
So stroking a dog, like if it's excited about something, maybe is this the context of like someone comes over or maybe it sees a squirrel or something, right?
Yeah.
High arousal. And stroking the dog, petting it, giving it that touch.
I mean, you have to take every situation into account.
Right.
Like if your dog's wanting to chase a squirrel and you're petting it, you're probably
amping it up,
increasing its likelihood of going after a squirrel. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But, if you're sitting on the couch, you're hanging out with your dog, maybe you're stressed out, you're petting your dog, that can help you reduce stress.
Yeah, right. Calms you down.
Right.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
So every situation is different.
Right.
So that brings up a good point. Don't just take that and say, oh, I should pet my dog at all times, which we'll talk about later in the book too. He says, hey, do not pet your dog in these situations because you're actually going against yourself. You know what I'm saying?
But touch in the primal sense.
It's going to be good for you. It's going to be good for your dog.
Right.
Especially if it's like your dog.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. He talks about taste. He says that taste and touch are the only senses that are functioning at birth. So the other senses are not online yet, but taste and touch are. He said that it's estimated that at any given time, approximately 30% of the dog population is overweight.
Oh.
Which he brings us up a couple different times in the book, but he brought it up during this chapter first. And we'll talk about reasons why later. But again, things that taste good to dogs, they might be eating a lot of it. We just keep feeding them.
Yeah.
They get fat. Not good, right?
Yeah.
He says that increased palatability increases eating, so does social competition. So palatability is basically how easy it is to eat a food. So like a human version would be like a French fry.
I mean, pretty easy.
They're easy to eat. They're good.
Real easy. Oh, yeah.
You know what else is easy to eat? Cookies, ice cream.
Milkshake.
Milkshake.
Really easy.
Compatibility, things that you can eat very fast.
Yeah.
That taste good. That's not going to necessarily help you.
Fast food.
Yeah.
You get that food fast rather than cooking a meal at home,
Right.
I mean,
it's not going to help you maintain that ideal body weight.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He did talk about how smell, not taste, was the important factor in establishing a preference for one meat over another. So he talked about some studies where there are some researchers that were trying to figure out about dogs choosing their food. And smell was the number one reason why dogs were choosing food over other food. So, I mean, that could be useful to someone that's having an issue finding what kind of food their dog likes, what kind of kibble. That smell is going to be what immediately triggers the dog to eat first for most dogs. We've all seen those dogs that are just whatever. They're just going for whatever, you know what I'm saying?
I got one.
I got one.
Yeah.
You got one. Yeah. All right, hearing. He says that dogs can actually hear sounds from 4 times the distance we can, but they still hear the sounds in a broadly similar fashion. So 4 times from what we can hear, they're hearing the same sounds, but they hear it about the same as if it was right next to us. You know what I'm saying?
I was going to say, if there was like a loud beeping noise, is that like amplified in their ears, but it sounds like
they can hear it
even if it was
4 times the way we can, but it sounds like what we can hear at our range.
Interesting.
Yeah. They are better at detecting higher notes than we can. So they can hear like obviously higher sounds than we can, but cats can hear higher than dogs.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And the way that dogs' ears are the mobility of their ears allows the dog to scan the environment for sound and collect the sound waves.
Yeah.
So that might be why a dog is turning you see how they turn their ear?
They'll fluctuate. Yeah.
Yep. They'll turn their ear to collect sounds from different situations.
Yeah.
Different things going on in the environment, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
So good to go with that. A lot of information I'm kind of just skipping over. I'm just going through my most important notes here.
Yeah.
Vision. We're talking about vision. He said the dog is perhaps 10 times more sensitive to peripheral movement, which is like on the side of you. So your peripheral vision is like not what you're looking directly at, it's to the side. So dogs are more sensitive to peripheral movement, things moving next to them or to their side of their head. They have poor vision up close, though reasonably good vision at a distance. So things that are up close to the dog, not very good at seeing. Things that are at a distance, they can see better. Obviously, if they're closer, they're going to default to smell.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But if you think about dogs and like wolves and all that, which we'll talk about right here, I'll go ahead and read it. The wolf has more lateral vision than many breeds of dogs. The eyes are placed further apart, but in many instances, we have emphasized breeds to have frontally placed eyes like humans. So if you think about like dogs, then like a wolf or a fox or a coyote or us, like our eyes are on the front of our head.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we don't have like as much peripheral vision as like a dog would that has eyes that are more to the side of their head.
Right.
Now, a lot of breeds we've bred over time to have eyes on the front of their head too. So they're going to have less peripheral.
Yeah.
But like a wolf or a fox or a coyote, their eyes are more placed to the side. So they have better peripheral vision, which gives them better visual all around them.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Better sense of their environment.
Definitely something to take into consideration.
Yeah.
Which can also play into the dogs not having good vision up close because their eyes are kind of offset so they can see better out of the sides of their head, but not that much right in front of them.
Yeah, it makes sense if there's like something on the ground, like a piece of food.
Right.
And maybe you're trying to point your dog to it and they're not figuring it out, and then you just start seeing the nose go to work, start sniffing, the nose will lead them right to that treat, or whatever's on the ground in front of them.
Definitely. He says dogs are exquisitely acute to the most imperceptible changes to their environment. They are masters at visually reading a territory or even an emotional state. So we all know that dogs are nonverbal beings.
Yeah.
They're focused primarily on visual communication, right? Body language. So that's what he's talking about right here. But they can perceive and they read very slight changes, right? If you come home angry, your dog knows it. If you come home happy, your dog knows it just by the way you're walking in the door, just by the pheromones that your body's putting off.
Yeah.
Right? He says dogs are primarily diurnal rather than nocturnal. which means their eyes are equipped to work best in twilight, not in complete darkness.
Interesting.
Like a lot of people think.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that dogs can see good in pure darkness, which they can see better than we can.
Yeah.
But their most ideal time frame to see things is at twilight, when the sun is just going down, when the sun's just coming up.
Interesting.
Very interesting. Huh?
Yeah. Ideal hunting times, I'm sure. Is that how the wolf is as well?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Which foxes are too, but also foxes can see pretty good at nighttime.
Yeah.
But with my experience with foxes, they can see pretty good at nighttime, but they can't see that good, because I've been able to sneak up real close to them because they can't really see that well, you know.
That's interesting.
At twilight and at like sunrise, they can see a lot better.
Yeah, because like I don't know about coyotes hunt at like
they'll hunt
almost
at
at nighttime, right?
Hunt at nighttime
dusk
too.
and nighttime.
Yeah. All right. Then he talks about scent. He says the average dog has such acutely sensitive scenting ability that it can detect and identify smells that are so dilute that even the most sensitive of scientific instruments cannot measure them. So dogs can detect things that scientific instruments cannot.
Dang.
And again, this was back in 1990, so I don't know what the technology changes have been, but we're still using dogs to detect bombs, detect drugs.
Mm-hmm.
So they definitely are still, you know, good at that.
Yeah.
Scent is undoubtedly the most important of the dog's practical senses, but also the most difficult for us to comprehend. We really, we can't comprehend. I mean,
clue.
It's just so insane.
Yeah.
All right. He talks about scent marking. You know, when your dog's like walking on the streets, peeing on everything, dog urine scent marking. He calls them scent telephones because there's so much information being provided through the scent marks. You know, the dog goes up, they smell the pee that someone else peed. There's a lot of information they're gathering, right?
Or they'll mark it for the next dog to find.
Right.
Like with
Then they'll
my
mark it
dog,
again.
Jojo, she'll pee and then she'll, kick all up in that area to get those scents nice and smelly for the next dog to come by. You know?
Which he'll detail more in a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely your dog will smell, pee on it to give their information.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Still talking about scent. He said the best condition for a dog to follow a trail is when the ground temperature is a little higher than the air temperature. So this could be important for people doing police canine dogs or scent tracking or search and rescue. When you're training these types of dogs, it's good to know that it's better for a dog to follow a trail when the ground temperature is higher than the air temperature. So that could be in the evening, could be in the morning, right? Those types of things.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to set up a good training scenario for your dog, that might be a good time to start.
Yeah.
Right before you get into more difficult situations, because you do want to progress to like everything else.
Yeah. That's crazy.
He also said the dog's success at following a scent could be increased by training, obviously, or by giving the dog small amounts of caffeine.
What?
So if you give a dog caffeine, it can enhance its senses a little bit.
Really?
Interesting.
Don't go out there giving your dogs, large amounts of coffee.
Why do you take coffee, boys? You want your senses to be energy drinks, all those types of things.
Yeah.
Works the same for dogs.
Dang. I think I would just be worried about the dog's heart if you gave him like a little bit of.
You don't want to give him too much.
Yeah.
You'd want to look into like the better doses and all that.
But then your dog might be jacked up
Your
too.
dog will be jacked.
So it's like be ready for that wave of energy.
You're going to go out and train scent work. You know what I'm saying?
Don't do it for anything else.
Right. Yeah, if you need your dog to perform, you can do it. But also, you don't want your dog to overperform. That could injure it. So you got to be careful.
Yeah.
All right. He says that certain viruses, such as parainfluenza, can damage the nasal membranes, and although nasal receptor cells replace themselves every 2 weeks, it takes about 6 weeks for a dog that has suffered a nasal infection to fully recover his scenting abilities. And I highlighted this because it's important, especially for people with working dogs, police canines, military canines, search and rescue, sport dogs. If your dog is like underperforming, then it's baseline. There might be some type of virus or something going on. So important to note, you might want to check it out. If your dog's underperforming, it may be something to look into. And you know that it'll take about 6 weeks to fully recover scenting ability. So don't be hard on your dog.
Oh, is there a way to pick up? Like, I guess you would have to take him to the vet or something.
Oh yeah, you definitely have to take him
find
to the
that
vet,
out.
figure
That's
it out
great.
for sure.
Huh.
He again says that dogs are sophisticated people watchers, which we know. But again, he's saying some of these things on repeat because of how important they are.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want to forget that.
Yeah.
All right, he says, the dog's mind is probably open to human social odors, and that smelling these odors enables the dog to decode and integrate human behaviors and perhaps emotional states and cognitive processes which underlie them, which means that the dog is detecting our odors, our pheromones, our sweat, all those types of things, and basically able to understand our behaviors, our emotional states, our cognitive processes through these scents. You know what I'm saying? So just like what we said earlier, your dog knows when you're coming home angry, knows when you're coming home happy. That could also be going on just from scent, right?
I wonder if this would apply to like service dogs.
Definitely.
Well, I mean, you know how like dogs, they say dogs can detect like people with stroke, like that are about to have a stroke or a seizure or something.
Yeah, definitely, because
I
your
guess-
body will put off certain pheromones and smells before those types of events.
Yeah.
That's why when you're training those types of dogs, you have to collect that smell. The most common way to do that is to use like a dental, I forgot the actual terminology, but if you go to like a dentist office and they do surgery, they have this wad of like cotton stuff. They shove it, like if they pull your wisdom teeth,
Yeah.
you're bleeding all over the place. They take this cotton wad, they shove it into that hole until the bleeding stops. You basically take that thing whenever there's an episode, you put that in your mouth so that your body is putting the scent into it through your saliva. Then you have to take that out. You have to freeze it. You can train with it, but you only have 6 months to use it before you have to like get rid of it.
That's crazy, man.
So yeah, that's how you're going to train like service dogs to scent type things,
Dang.
right? But that does get kind of complicated.
Yeah, that's
so
real complicated.
You definitely want to know more about that. But that, basically that's what's going on there with the service dogs. All right, continuing on. He's talking about body rhythms next. He says that free-ranging dogs are most active in the morning, foraging and marking their territories. You know, they're going out, they're checking things out,
their morning pee,
getting things going for the morning.
Yep, got to hit the favorite tree.
Eating some grass.
Yep.
Pet dogs will show this behavior too, simply by standing more during the morning than at other times of the day. Pet dogs will sleep about half of the day, will stand for about a quarter of it, and spend the other quarter either sitting down or lying down. So, basically.
So it might be better to walk your dog in the morning.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to be naturally, if we're talking about circadian rhythm,
Right.
that's going to be natural. You're going to have more movement in the morning. And as the sun goes down, you're going to move less, from a circadian rhythm standpoint.
Yeah.
As a pet dog.
Right.
Because as a free-ranging dog, like a wild dog, you're up in the morning, you're probably resting through the day, you're up again at twilight.
Yeah.
Remember? Because they're operating mainly when that diurnal, the sun is kind of like going up and coming down.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Interesting.
You could operate either way.
Yeah.
But just important to note, good things to be aware of. And then the last section of this chapter, the senses, he says, we're talking about, again, puppies that need stimulation. Puppies that need things going on during their day. So he says, pups that are purchased and then left at home all day with little sensory stimulation will try to stimulate their senses themselves, often by being what we consider destructive.
A lot of people know this one.
Right. So he brings it up. He's brought it up already multiple times. But your dogs need mental stimulation.
Yeah.
Your dogs need instinctual needs to be met, which is letting them use their senses.
Yeah.
Right? You want them to be able to smell things, touch things, feel things, see things, right? That's why your walks are important. It's why your mental exercises throughout the day are important. Like those, we put up a video on YouTube of using your dog's nose with a basic food drill.
Yeah.
Toss the food off into the grass, turn your dog around, have them go find it. That's stimulating their sense.
Yeah.
Right? The scenting sense.
Make the brain work.
Right. Exactly. So all important things to note.
And it's good for them because they get a treat out of it.
Definitely like it.
Oh, yeah.
Then you have to modify their diet. Too many treats and normal food. You get that overweight dog. Not good to go.
You got to find the balance for sure.
That's right. All right, chapter 4, he talks about hormones in the mind. He says that hormones have a profound influence on behavior. Behavior has a profound influence on hormones. So it's a back and forth process here. Take, for example, the situation of the dominant male dog, the leader of the pack. With pet dogs, the pack, regrettably, is often the human household in which he lives.
Regrettably.
That's what he says.
Interesting.
A dog is not born with the genetic blueprint to have a high testosterone level. Rather, it is the circumstances of his existence. The dog that copes best with stress is the dog that becomes a natural leader. And the natural leader is then entitled to increase his testosterone level to help him maintain his position of authority. Technically, the phenomenon is called biofeedback. Technically.
Right.
Biofeedback.
Technically.
So this happens with humans too.
Yeah.
He says, as I have mentioned earlier, pups that are routinely exposed to sensory stimulation when they are young, that are exposed to noises, flashing lights, balance tests, they grow up to be bigger animals with bigger brains and cope better when placed in new or unexpected situations. When confronted with a novel environment, these pups don't freeze or panic, but instead they investigate. They examine their surroundings. They behave this way because of the hormonal feedback that is influenced by early experience. So he continues to hammer this point home.
Yeah, he's
Obviously.
going hard on it. Yeah.
Which Dr. Fogle is a veterinarian, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he continues to hammer this home, that early exposure to stimuli is super important.
Yeah.
But going back to what he said about biofeedback, the phenomenon of biofeedback, he talked about the dog that becomes a natural leader, right? His testosterone is going to increase as time goes on. So winning, your body will naturally start rewarding you by increasing your hormones, right? Losing, your body's going to start cutting your hormones, right? So that you don't challenge the leader, that your biology doesn't want conflict like that. You know what I'm saying? So that's what he's talking about with biofeedback.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what that means is, like, if you have a dog, which we'll talk about, if you have a dog that keeps getting wins, their body is rewarding them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? With more hormones. So training, management, those types of things become important when you're trying to modify behavior.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's crazy.
Yeah. All right, continuing on. He says, a curious aspect of adrenal hormone production is its effect on sex hormone production in males. Studies have been carried out showing that tennis players, after winning a match, have an increase in testosterone levels, while players who have lost a match have a decreased testosterone level. The same phenomenon occurs in monkeys and politicians and seems to be adaptive.
Yeah.
This guy's getting a little political.
Yeah.
In 1990.
Cracking a joke on everyone.
If you're the winner, testosterone helps you to maintain your dominant position. If you're the loser, reduced testosterone levels inhibit a potentially losing challenge. This biofeedback mechanism is one of the reasons why it can be difficult to dislodge a dominant dog by being pleasant to him. The stress of defeat is often necessary to prepare him for his come down.
I mean, it's a lot to unpack, but I feel like that's just, first of all, that's just humans. You know,
Humans and dogs.
You win. Yeah, I mean, just applying it to the human world first.
Right.
Like he was saying, politicians, maybe you win the election or something. You're like, oh yeah, you know, or you win a football game, or you score a touchdown, or you know, you win a race or something like that. You're like, I'm on top of the world, baby.
Right.
You know, nothing can bring me down.
Yeah, your hormones.
But if you lose, you're like, you know, what the hell?
Right, your hormones are coming down.
You're definitely in a downward slump. You know, I got to train harder to win maybe again, and maybe you got that thought in the back of your head, maybe I won't win next time.
That's when your mind has to overpower what your body's trying to do to your biofeedback.
In the dog world, so he's saying, like, is this apply it directly to dominant dogs? Because he brings up dominant dogs, but how would a dog, would this apply to a dog that's not dominant? Getting a win?
It would apply to any dog, but the dominant dog is the most dangerous dog.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And often the hardest to train.
Yeah.
And so that's why he brings up the dominant dog, which he talks more in detail in a little bit, which we'll talk about. But a dominant dog, you know, people are like, positive only training.
Yeah.
Let's give the dog what he wants. Dominant dog, you cannot do that with.
Yeah.
Because what's that dog want? That dog wants to dominate you.
Yeah.
It wants to do what it wants. What if that dog needs to be in a kennel for its own safety and for management, but it's refusing to go in there because it's dominant?
Yeah.
And you're trying to put it in there, and it keeps fighting you, and it wins, and it gets to stay outside the kennel.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
He's feeling good.
He's feeling good.
Oh,
and his fights are going to get more and more powerful, more and more stronger to resist what you're trying to get him to do. You know? But if you can get the stress of defeat, what he calls the stress of defeat, which I don't want anyone to think that that's a crazy thing. There's different ways to achieve that.
Yeah.
But basically you're getting his body to prepare him mentally for coming off of his high horse, to say. So another thing to take away from this in dog training world is don't expect things to happen super fast, because these hormones, these processes, they take time.
Yeah.
So just because you got a dog in the kennel that's fighting the kennel one day doesn't mean they'll do it the next day.
Yeah.
You know, because they're going to be trying to maintain that high horse. So you have to understand what's going on scientifically in the dog's body and brain, so that you can take that into account during your daily training with the dog. And that's one of the reasons why this book, The Dog's Mind, is a required reading for any of our apprentices and dog trainers.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Required reading. Should be required for anybody.
It is
Everybody.
a good book. It is a really good book.
All right. So moving on. He says, needless to say, this developmental pattern comes on stream at puberty, which is why this time in the dog's life is one in which there can be dramatic behavioral changes. This is the time when, in his mind, he might choose to challenge his human pack members for leadership of the group. So biofeedback, you know, increasing hormones in the body, that's going to come on stream around the dog's puberty, which is what happened with me and my dog. When I hit between 1 and 2 years old with him,
that's when the
flip
party
switched,
started.
and he started doing this right here, challenging human pack members for leadership of the group. That's exactly what was going on. Continuing on, he says the effect of male hormone on behavior probably begins before birth. Just before or around the time of birth, the male pup is masculized by a surge of testosterone through his body. So before the dog is even born, they get a surge of testosterone that starts these processes, right? So important to note, important to know.
Is this mainly, this might be a dumb question, is this mainly in male dogs?
Well, both male and female have biofeedback,
right?
But when we're talking about these types of behavioral problems, it's mainly going to be a male thing.
Yeah.
Females can do it.
Yeah.
It's more rare, but it can happen.
Right.
But it's mainly going to be a male thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, definitely interesting. All right, continuing on, he says, mounting is a dog's technique for showing dominance and can occur independent of sex. Dominant male or female dogs might mount others of their same sex, not because they are homosexual, but simply as a sign of pack seniority. So a lot of people have questions about that. You know, people have asked me about that. Why does my dog mount the other dog? It's because they're showing dominance, right? And that's going to trigger biofeedback. So you got to be careful. I don't allow dogs to do that if I see it happening.
Yeah.
You know? So just be aware of that and understand what it is. And I would say if you have a female dog that's doing this, they're going to have a higher increase of being that female dog that has high biofeedback and could do some of the things that we're talking about as far as a dominant sense goes, of responding to the human pack members like that.
Yeah.
He says there are several false myths concerning sexual activity and emotional behavior. Male dogs will not become emotionally more stable if they have sexual experience. That's in the mind of the owner, not the dog. Similarly, it's a fallacy that dogs should be castrated so they will be less frustrated. That's also in the human mind, not the canine one. And he said, puberty does not signify emotional maturity. So these are some myths that people think about when it comes to dogs. He says, my dog needs to have sex, you know? to experience it, right? That's all in the owner's mind. The dog doesn't need that to become more stable.
What about neutering? Did he talk about neutering?
Yeah, we're about to talk about it. Castrating, he said it's a fallacy that they should be castrated to be less frustrated, which we'll talk about that in detail here in a second. And some people think that when they hit puberty, they're emotionally mature. They're not. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So just some things to keep in mind.
And puberty is normally 1 to 2 years, between 1 to 2?
Around 1 to 2 years, yeah, for most dogs.
And it lasts for?
A couple months. Yeah, I'd say about 6 months. All right. Same chapter, he says, Ben Hart at the University of California carried out the most extensive survey on the effect of castration on dogs and came up with these statistics.
There we go.
So these are the statistics about castrating, cutting your dog's balls off, right? And he rates it by behavior. So the first behavior is roaming. If your dog roams off and all that, if you castrate your dog, it has the possibility to reduce it in about 90% of cases. So overall, pretty effective.
Yeah.
Possibility of getting 90% reduction in roaming.
Is roaming just going as far as they can go?
You know, the dogs that get out and they just
take off.
Yeah. But here's the thing. If your dog has been practicing that, then you cut their balls, they're still going to practice it because it's a behavioral habit at that point.
Right.
You know, intermale aggression reduced in 60% of cases. So if you have a dog that tends to want to dominate and fight with other males, you have the potential to reduce that in 60% of cases, which is not that. It's not that much. It's
almost 50-50.
Right.
Yeah.
Mounting people.
Here we go.
Reduced in 60% of cases, you know.
A little humping action.
Yeah. Urine marking in the house.
Oh, here we go.
Reduced in 50% of cases.
So
that's not that much. Not that much difference. He says castration does not change a dog's personality, nor does it interfere with the abilities of working dogs, whether they are service, hunting, or guard dogs. Castration doesn't influence the dog's relationship with people either, except that it will ultimately be more likely that the castrated dog will accept authority more readily from his human pack members than he would have before castration. So here's my 2 cents on this, right? Your dog's going to do whatever you allow it to do. So if you decide to castrate your dog or not, it's going to do what you allow it to do. So let's say your dog turns a year old, you decide to fix it. It's still going to be doing the same behaviors it was before because it's been practicing those for so long. Now they're a behavioral habit. It's just going to be going on, right? Same thing's going to be going on. So my personal opinion, based on conversations I've had with veterinarians, is to not fix your dog before they're 3 years old if you're going to fix them. Because at 3 is when the growth plates close, when their body has reached that point to where it's fully developed after needing all those hormones. You know what I'm saying? If you fix it too early, you run the risk of developmental problems because it doesn't have all hormones available. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents. I don't recommend it until they're at least 3 years old. I do recommend training from day 1.
Yeah.
I recommend training from day 0.
Yeah.
I recommend training from before they're born, which we'll talk about. The prenatal period, super important, right? If you're a breeder. So training is going to be your go-to, not castration.
So there's your answer to everyone. Oh, I got him neutered. He's still doing the same thing.
Right.
You know, or, you know, I didn't see it help a lot.
Dude, people will call me. They'll tell me that they fixed their dog and that they're better at this, better at that. I'm like, no, they're not. It's in your head.
Right.
It's in your head. You think they're better.
Right.
You think they're better.
Yeah.
It's just that you did this and you think that it's fixing it.
Yeah.
You know?
Now that's for males. Does he talk about female? Does the same thing apply for spaying for females? Like,
yeah, he does talk in detail about spaying, but it's like,
do you have to wait the 3 years, or?
I would still wait 3 years, you know,
Okay.
but because females don't have the same problems that males do overall, it really just
boils down to growth.
It would just come down to your personal preference, you know. He says that spaying doesn't change the personality of a female. If anything, it preserves a natural personality. So I think, you know, as time goes on, that the female could change with hormones, especially if they're having puppies and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, interesting.
The other problem with spaying and neutering is that there's a lot of irresponsible people. They let their dogs go out. They start banging. They're starting to have puppies. Now we have more dogs. That's a problem.
Yeah.
You know, because we already have shelters that are full. We already have animal sanctuaries that are full.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that is another problem. So if you're going to be irresponsible with your dog, you might want to do that so that you can help dogs overall.
Yeah.
But if you're a responsible dog owner, like a lot of the people I work with, wait till they're 3 at least, and you can keep them longer than that. So anyway, getting off that, moving into chapter 5, which is communication.
All right.
He starts out by saying, dogs communicate with each other by using all of the building blocks of their behavior in an integrated fashion. They utilize a number of their senses simultaneously: sound, visible marks in their environment, facial expression, body position, and scent. Nonverbal communication through scent is mediated by chemicals that dogs produce called pheromones. So again, dogs are nonverbal beings. They're not going to communicate like we do.
Yeah.
They're going to use all their senses, right? He says pheromones are present in their saliva, feces, urine, vaginal, and precipital secretions, and in their anal, perineal, and dorsal tail glands. Dogs' feces act as calling cards for other dogs. They provide information of the name, rank, and serial number variety to the sniffer in several ways. First of all, feces get coated with the mucus secreted by gland cells in the large intestine. Then anal sac secretions and products from the perineal glands are added. These pheromones give sex and social information. Sniffing the anal region is simply the canine equivalent of shaking hands. Just as we note whether a hand is sweaty or a grip is firm, whether there is a wedding ring, whether a hand is soft or chafed, dogs derive similar information and distinguish individuals by their anal region smells.
Dang. So they got it all figured out just by one butt sniff.
So if your dog's sniffing butts, it's normal behavior.
Yeah.
Don't freak out.
Checking the Facebook, like we said.
That's right. He says, once the anal smells of the new dog or person.
What?
Dog smelling people.
Yeah.
You know how they come
dog
up.
nose ever goes up on your butt. Hey, they're just checking.
They come up in
checking
your crotch
to see what's
and all
up.
that. He says, once the anal smells of the new dog are recognized, the sniffer goes on to sniff the other pheromones from other parts of the dog's body. The lips, for example. So you know how dogs like sniff all over each other? They sniff all over people too.
Yeah.
There's like so much information that they're absorbing. He says, anal sac secretion mirrors the dog's status and self-confidence as well as his sexual status. Small dogs that drag their bottoms on the grass or the carpet, or larger dogs that obsessively lick their anal regions, are really trying to empty their anal glands. You know?
Yeah.
Anal glands.
Yeah. Had to get theirs expressed a couple times.
How many people out there have a dog that's dragging their butt on the ground or licking their butt all the time?
Yeah.
They're getting those anal glands empty, you know?
Yeah.
Moving on. He said, urine is the other major source of pheromones in dogs. Urine contains sex hormones and leaves information on the reproductive condition of the female and the power and authority of the male. Now, if you're a dog and you want to leave packets of information concerning yourself for others to find, it's best you leave them at nose level, and this is why dogs cock their legs. To get the urine up so that when other dogs are walking by, they're, oh, what's that?
Hey,
they smell it.
Packet of information, right?
Yep. The frequency of urine marking is not constant, however, and is directly related to the early experience the dog has had in his life. So again, if a dog has practiced it, it's going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
If a dog has not practiced it, it's not going to keep doing it.
Right.
It's very possible that almost all types of urine marking, whether the cause might outwardly appear to be related to aggression or to sex, are simply stress reducing in the dog by surrounding himself with a familiar scent. So some dogs might be marking to get a familiar scent around them. If you have a dog come into your house, they start peeing on everything. I can't imagine that.
Yeah.
But let's just say it happens. That dog could be having some stress or anxiety about being in a new place.
Yeah.
So they start marking things to be surrounded with a familiar scent. Or same thing in your yard. Your dog goes out in the yard, peeing on everything. Maybe it does it every morning.
Yeah.
Because at nighttime, the possums, the raccoons, and everything are coming into your yard, whatever. And so it's trying to, again, surround itself with familiar smells.
Yeah.
Or if you're walking, same thing. So it can have a couple of different meanings. But they're giving information, right? They're putting their scent out there. They're also getting information from smelling this stuff. I mean, it's much more complicated than the average person even thinks about.
Yeah, hard to comprehend.
Right. Males and females will sometimes mark their urine or feces by scratching at the earth around them, like you were talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. These marks act like arrows pointing at the marker as well as spreading the scent around. It's also possible that another scent is left at the site from the glands between their toes. The damage that scratching does to the nearby vegetation will also be evident to the sensitive noses of other passing canines. So why does your dog scratch the ground? It's because it's trying to signal to other dogs, hey, I've left information here.
Yeah.
I've left
right
scent
here, buddy, right here.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. All right, I learned something new today already.
So very complex method of communication.
Yeah.
And again, like we talked about earlier, we literally don't understand the level of scent that the dogs have.
Information passing around.
Right. What they're able to actually detect and all that. All right, moving on. Page 61. Good number. Voice, on the other hand, is probably the weakest form of canine communication, but is still, nevertheless, much more intriguing than it might outwardly appear to be. So dogs do make noises.
Yeah.
If you're listening, you've probably heard some noises in the background from Ben's dog.
Jojo. Old Jojo. She's a talker.
So although it's not their primary method of communication, it's their weakest form of communication, it still has more than we think involved in it. He says, as with scent, sounds can communicate individual, physiological, and sexual information. Sophisticated analysis of wolf howls show that each howl is unique as a fingerprint, that they are complicated sounds that probably serve several functions. So every dog,
got
has
their own
different
way
noises,
of speaking, right? Mm-hmm.
Two dogs bark. Each bark is different. Each bark is like a fingerprint to that dog.
Yeah.
It's unique to that dog, just like our voices are for us.
Yeah.
He says, human intervention in dog breeding has accentuated all these forms of communication, but none more than the infantile sounds of dogs. You know what that is? Whining, barking, what do you call it? They don't open their mouth, but they're like making a noise, humming, murmuring, those types of things.
Like that.
Infantile sounds. By neotizing the dog, by perpetuating juvenile behavior into adulthood, we have increased the frequency of crying and whining, especially in certain breeds. What you will rarely ever see in an adult dog whining at another dog. What you will rarely ever see is an adult dog whining at another dog. They rarely whine at each other, but rather direct it at us. This is really a learned response. Pups very quickly register that juvenile whines and whimpers are marvelous ways of getting our attention. This means that this form of communication can be controlled and diminished as long as we don't reward it with either interest, affection, or food.
Right. Ignore it. It might diminish, right?
Your dog's a puppy.
Excessive whining.
It's at 8 weeks old. You're petting it all the time. It's making little noises. You show it affection. You show it interest. You give it food. You coddle it. You're creating a dog later in life that's going to make noises.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You are accentuating infantile sounds of dogs.
Yeah.
So later in life, don't complain that your dog's whining or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the final method of communication for dogs that we haven't talked about is visual communication. And I will say that in this book, he has a lot of great sections with pictures. A lot of great
My
pictures
favorite
and
part.
sketches.
Yeah.
Yep. And he'll show different dog body language. So that's another good part about this book. But he said emotions can usually be identified from facial and body signals, but not always, which is important to note. Remember, dogs are nonverbal beings.
Yeah.
They're going to communicate through body language. You know what I'm saying? So there's things that we can pick up on dogs' body language where we can learn, hey, this most of the time means this, right? But when you've seen a lot of dogs, like I've seen so many dogs, I can a lot of times pick up, okay, it might be that, but it could also might be this, right, in terms of their behavior.
Right.
He says, when dogs watch us, they watch our eyes. They do so because eye contact is an important means of communicating authority. The dominant dog stares down less dominant ones, and the submissive dog avoids direct eye contact by averting his gaze and exposing the neck. Mm-hmm. Who has seen this?
Yeah.
Most people that have dogs. You see the dog staring down other ones.
Oh, we
you
got a video
looking away. Yep, absolutely. JoJo in Georgia.
Yep. Perfect example.
He gives a list of some of the ways that dogs signal their feelings. First up is calm. Ears and tail relaxed. Mm-hmm. So ears relaxed to me is like a dog neutral ear position, what they would normally hold it at around the house.
Right.
Tail relaxed, it's going to be like hanging down in a comfortable position.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Not curled, not held up straight, just hanging out. I call it neutral.
Yeah.
You know? Alert, ears are up, tail is up. Alert.
Ears up and forward, right?
Right. Well, that would be like a dominant. But like alert, you think like there's a noise outside. You hear your dog perk up.
You know? A little perk up.
Like they pull their tail up, they pull their head up, they got their ears up, they're looking around. Mm-hmm. Aggressive, hackles up. Hackles is the hair on the dog's back between the shoulder blades towards the butt, sometimes on the tail. Mm-hmm. Hackles up, tail up, rump up.
Yep.
That's the butt.
Yep.
Lips pulled back. Mm. Increased aggressive. Snarl with teeth exposed. Straight stance. You know how your dog gets stiff?
Yeah.
Frightened. Ears flattened back. Tail between legs. Mm-hmm. This is also the fear biter posture if you approach past his critical distance, which a fear biter is a dog that's so scared, you've got him cornered, or he feels like he's cornered, he's biting because of that. Fear. Crouched with tail between legs. So just think about a dog that's like backing up, that's getting closer to the ground, tail's curled up between his legs. Maybe he's looking at you, maybe not.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Abject submission. Lying down, hind leg lifted, urinates. You seen that dog?
Yeah.
Maybe you walk into somebody's house.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know.
You're greeting their dog, and their dog just flops over, lifts a leg up. You're petting them. That dog is like submitting to you like crazy. And you're like, oh, they want some belly rubs, you know?
Yeah. And then start peeing all over you.
Yeah. And then if they pee, it's like, okay, that's extreme.
Yeah.
Greeting, licking the face, begging for regurgitation of food or play bow. Mm-hmm. So he does talk about this. When puppies are developing, I don't remember if I'm going to cover it here in this podcast or not, but when puppies are developing, you know, in the wild, their mother comes back to their den, the father comes back to the den, the puppies are licking, jumping on that father and mother's face. They're begging for food regurgitation, right? Because they know that adult came to the den to bring them food.
Yeah.
So this type of behavior is still present today in a lot of dogs, and this is why dogs will jump and lick your face and all that when you first come home. Mm-hmm. That's one of the underlying behavioral instincts there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So anyway, those are some of the ways that dogs can signal their feelings. We also did a podcast on the tail of the tail where we kind of went into this in more detail. That was a good
episode, yeah.
So just something to note. But again, it's not always going to be what you think it is, right? So knowing this stuff is important, but also knowing, hey, this is probably what it is, but not 100%.
Yeah.
And dogs can change like that.
Right.
You know, so understanding that things can be very fluid at times.
Yeah.
So anyway. All right. So that's part 1 of the book. It's super sciencey. We covered some wave tops there. There's a lot of information I didn't cover, you know, but now part 2 is where we get into the psychology of the dog's mind starting with early learning, maternal and peer imprinting. All right, so starting off in chapter 6 about early learning, he says the ability to learn to live compatibly with dogs and with us ends at 12 weeks of age, and that the most critical period was 6 to 8 weeks of age. So in this chapter, he's going to be talking about what to do with puppies, the importance of puppies from about 0 to 12 weeks old, which is important from people buying puppies. It's also important for breeders.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He says, pups raised in complete isolation to 7 weeks of age could still recover completely and become socially normal. So, I mean, this information right here also pertains to like the puppies that you get from the rescue, because they can find dogs on the side of the road. These puppies may have been isolated. You need to take action with them to get them over that isolation immediately, right? Yeah. So he says right here, they could be raised in complete isolation to 7 weeks of age and still recover, right? But if they're isolated to 12 weeks of age, it's going to be extremely difficult to get them to recover to being okay with people and dogs. He said he basically breaks down puppy development into 3 or 4 stages, periods. The first period is what he calls the neonatal period. This is from 0 to 2 weeks of age for puppies. The second stage is the transitional period, which is from 2 to 4 weeks of age for puppies. The third stage is the socialization period. Specifically to dogs is going to be 4 to 6 weeks of age, and specifically to humans is going to be 4 to 12 weeks of age. So keep these periods in your brain, write them down, especially if you're a breeder. We're going to deep dive into each one of these here in a minute. He said, each pup is already under the influence of his own genes as well as his mother's hormones. Some have a considerable head start before they even emerge into the world. This is why we should first look at the prenatal influence on the dog's mind. So we just mentioned the main periods of the dog and their development: neonatal, transitional, socialization. But now he's adding another one, a fourth one.
Yeah.
The prenatal period, which applies to dogs, applies to humans.
Yeah.
All right, so the prenatal period, he says, if the mother is stressed during pregnancy, her pups grow as more fearful animals. Probably because when she's stressed, her body's pumping hormones throughout the body. It's moving different hormones around. Right. He also says, if the mother is stressed during the third term of her pregnancy, her pups will show reduced learning ability, extremes of behavior, and increased emotional states. So just some things that could happen.
Yeah.
So ideally, keep the mother not stressed.
Keep her calm.
Keep her calm. He goes on, it's only logical to assume that environmental factors that affect the pregnant female can also affect the subsequent development of her pups' minds. This is why proper nutrition, good exercise, and warmth are so important during pregnancy. This is also why it's important to avoid unnecessary x-rays, unnecessary drugs, unnecessary chemicals, and to prevent parasites and disease.
I feel like this just applies to, I don't know anything about women, pregnant women, but it sounds like
it applies to anything pregnant. Applies to anything pregnant, I would say, you know?
If you're pregnant, listen up.
Right, exactly. So prenatal, you know, a lot of people don't think about that. So if you're interviewing breeders, if you're someone that's looking for a puppy and you're interviewing breeders, ask them what's going on with the mother during the pregnancy. What is she doing? What are they feeding her? All those types of things. Are they still giving her exercise? You know? Moving on, the next period is the neonatal period, which remember is from 0, so birth, to 2 weeks of age. He says the pup is almost wholly under the care of the mother, and the way she behaves with her pups will influence their behavior later in life. So he's already saying the way the mother behaves with her pups and treats her pups is going to influence them later in life.
Yeah.
So if you're interviewing breeders, you want to know about the mothers that they're using.
Yeah.
He says the maternal influence on the subsequent development of the pup's mind was far greater than had ever been expected. So you're going to underestimate how much influence that mother has on the puppies. The first weeks of the puppy's life are its most important. That the earliest experiences it has will have a tremendous impact on the mind of the pup. Normal maternal behavior involves nest building 24 to 48 hours before birth, a restlessness for about 24 hours, and then final parturition. The mother licks the pups dry, but otherwise ignores them until all have been born. This licking is important for the mother as it imprints the pups into her mind. This is why there are more rejection problems for pups born by C-section, where the mother can't carry out this imprinting procedure. The mother cleans up her nest by eating the afterbirths, which is good housekeeping. So everything that came out, eat everything.
I'm gonna puke.
Sometimes mothers become excessively tidy, eating the afterbirths, chewing up the umbilical cords, but then eating the pups.
Yeah, I'm gonna puke.
This form of cannibalism occurs most frequently, he says, bull terriers, and it's probably a genetic default, a genetic fault. Other forms of cannibalism, horrible as they may seem, are normal. Cannibalism as a standard method of litter size control. Reducing the number of mouths to feed and feeding herself at the same time seems to be a rather good survival tactic. Females certainly rid the nest of the sickliest by moving them away from the others and leaving them to die. This is normal, sensible canine behavior for the experienced mother, but can also occur erroneously with immature or emotional females that isolate healthy pups this way. So pausing right there
That's
real
a
quick.
lot. Hey, that's a lot to take in right there.
A lot of information. But it's normal, right? Starting off at the beginning of that section, the mother's going to get restless. She's going to make a nest, right? Then she's going to have the babies. Once she has them, she's going to lick them dry. This is important because it imprints the puppies to her mind. Also, important to note, a mother that has a C-section can't do that, right? So it has a possibility of having a rejection from the mother. Then the mother's going to clean up the nest, eating the afterbirths, the umbilical cords, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes they eat puppies. So it could be to control the size of the litter. Maybe, hey, there's too many things to feed. We have to reduce the size. I think that's not likely in like a domesticated litter than it is in the wild, right? But it does happen. And it happens across a lot of different animals, right? Not just dogs.
Or like getting the weakling out.
Getting the weak out, because the weak is going to be hard to survive, right?
Yeah.
Then he says that sometimes mothers will take the sickest ones and move them away and just leave them on their own. You know, and I've seen this with my mini hatchings of chickens and guinea fowl. You know, you might have one hatchling that's super not normal. You know what I'm saying? And being a human, we try to help that hatchling be the best it can be, but sometimes they don't make it.
Right.
So as a mother doing that, like a wild mother, is not going to be taking on that extra effect. They're trying to keep everyone as strong as possible. They can identify, hey, this one's not going to make it, and they'll just do what they need to do.
Definitely instinctual.
Yeah. Once the litter is born, the mother licks and grooms the pups, stimulating them to urinate and defecate, but also imprinting on their developing minds their first outside message: I am your mother. This is what my saliva smells like.
Yeah.
Because remember, going back to what we talked about, we got taste and we got touch. Those are the first scents, right? He goes on, this chemical clue is vital for the pup's survival. Mothers lay a saliva trail by licking the pups and licking her nipples. If her nipples are clean with soap and water, the pups can't find them. So if you're a breeder, or if you're with a rescue and you find a mother and puppies, don't wash her nipples.
Yeah.
Because the puppies have to find them and she's licked them.
Yeah.
You know? This is why it can be so frustratingly unsuccessful to try and get a pup to suckle by simply sticking its mouth on a teat. It doesn't have the smell stimulation.
Right.
Right? So just let them be natural. Right?
I guess that, it makes sense.
He does bring up about dominant puppies. You can kind of detect it at a young age, because dominant pups might express their superiority by denying a certain teat to others in the litter. So if you're a breeder, you can kind of pick up on these things already.
Yeah.
And I've worked with some breeders in the past where they've allowed me to bring a couple trainers over and observe a litter of puppies, and we're trying to pick out all behaviors that could signal future behaviors, which I think is a good exercise.
Yeah.
All right. So that's kind of what's going on, right, during the birth, right, and why certain things are important.
Yeah.
Some of this stuff, when I first read this, I was like, holy cow, it makes so much sense.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But this is super important information for a breeder.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do not wash those nipples because those pups got to find them to get their food.
Yeah.
And if you're like working with a rescue too, you know how they'll try to like get the puppy to start taking the milk and all that, but the puppy's not able to do it or whatever. It's because they don't have the scent smell.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, makes sense for sure.
Yeah, he goes on here saying, the first 12 weeks of age are such a critical period in the pup's life. By controlling his environment, we can actually influence the final form and structure of his mind. As I've previously mentioned, early handling, stressing at this age is actually good for the emotional development of the dog and probably makes him better to cope with stresses later in life. Dogs mature faster if they undergo mild stresses in early life. The question remains as to exactly what is the optimum amount of stress that a young pup should receive, because it is also known that too much stress at an early age leads to subsequent retarded development. So this is one of those things you got to balance out. You want to apply stress, but not too much stress. You don't want to go overboard with it, right? So during the neonatal period, you're going to want to make sure that you're picking up the puppies, you know, handling them, blowing on their faces, talking to them, getting them away from the warmth of the mother for a couple seconds, putting them back. You know what I'm saying? Just slowly stressing them, not too much, right? But slowly introducing some stress so their brains can fully develop. So they can develop
only
a
couple seconds at a time, or because he said it's like a question, right?
Right. It's a question about what is the exact optimal amount of time. But you take the puppy out, like if the puppies are with the mother, you pick one out, you hold it up, you know, you turn it around or whatever, you blow on its face, you talk to it, it's going to be crying or whatever because it's away from the warmth. But you're inducing little bits of stress, and you put that puppy back, you get the next one.
Right.
This type of handling, super important for the development of the puppy.
Interesting.
During this stage, the neonatal stage, which is 0 to 2 weeks old. So, I mean, they're tiny.
Yeah, they're little things.
They're just flopping around.
Yeah.
The evidence is firm that mild stresses, even in the neonatal period, are good for the development of the pup's mind. That constant temperature, comfort, and freedom from adverse conditions does not make better pups. Mild stresses will accelerate body growth, reduce emotionability, and possibly increase resistance to certain diseases. So again, he's just stressing the importance of these.
Yeah.
What is most important to understand about the neonatal period of canine development is that a hands-off policy, a policy of leaving it to nature, of allowing the dog mother to behave naturally, is definitely not in the interest of the pup. The pup's mind will develop faster and further through sensitive early handling. We can help by providing a good environment, but more than anything else, the pup needs the right mother. During the neonatal period, the mother is the overwhelming influence on the pup's development. During the neonatal period, virtually all social interaction is with the mother. The other littermates and we are of a little importance. So he's starting to shift the focus onto the development of the puppy.
Right.
We talked about the stresses that the puppy needs. They need handling. They need to not be kept in comfort and constant temperature, not too much, not too little. It's one of those balancing things.
Right.
So my recommendation to breeders, if you've got a litter of puppies, once a day, go handle each one, blow on their faces, get them away from the warmth for a couple seconds, you know, turn them around in your hand, those types of things, hold them, and then put them back with the mother.
Right.
But we do know that the mother is with them. The mother is influencing the puppy. So if you choose the wrong mother to be a mother of puppies, it could have impacts on them. If you have a mother that doesn't like humans, guess what? Those puppies are not going to like humans because they're learning from the mother.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you need a good social mom that is the kind of dog you want the pups to grow up to be. All right, continuing on into the transitional period. And if we back it up, the transitional period is from 2 to 4 weeks of age.
All right.
So the first 2 weeks are the neonatal, the next 2 weeks are the transitional period. And this is when most of the pup's sensory abilities come on stream, right? So first off, at 2 weeks of age, the eyes are opening. The pup's response to light and to moving objects is rather weak and variable, but by 4 weeks, it is similar to that of the adult. Another week before the pup readily and easily recognizes from a distance his mother or owner. So at 2 weeks, the eyes are opening. They can respond to light and moving objects. 4 weeks, similar to an adult. 5 weeks, the pup is easily recognizing from a distance his mother or owner, those types of things.
Right.
So what that means to me is, as a breeder, it's my responsibility that as the eyes are starting to open, induce little amounts of stress into the vision.
Yeah.
Have the puppy, take the puppy away from its mother, have it find its way back, those types of things.
Yeah.
Next section, hearing and balance. It's not until the young animal is 12 to 14 days old, so about 2 weeks, that his external ear canals open and that a brisk startle response to a loud noise will be evident. 3 to 4 weeks of age, all the characteristics of older animals. So what this means to me, again, if I'm a breeder, it's my responsibility that as this puppy's hitting 2 weeks old, I'm starting to introduce different noises to the puppy that I want it to be used to.
Right.
Right? Loud noises, sudden noises, those types of things.
Right.
Right. Next section, touch and pain. When pups are born, only their heads have touch reflexes. Why is that? Because they're using their head to find the nipple.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? By 2 weeks of age, their front legs have touch reflexes. By 3 weeks, the hind legs do. This is why pups can sit at 2 weeks old and stand at 3 weeks. By 4 weeks of age, most of the brain is myelinated and ready for complex learning. So backing it up real quick, the touch. Again, if I'm a breeder, 2 weeks of age, front legs are feeling things. 3 weeks, the hind limbs have touch.
Yeah.
So again, I want to be touching these things, stressing them.
Yeah.
Healthy stress.
Right.
Maternal influence on the development of the pup's mind still remains strong, but during the transition state, the influence of the littermates and of us starts to increase. So now, as we go through this transitional period, 2 to 4 weeks old, the mother is still there. Her influence is still in effect, but now the littermates and human influence is taking effect as well. And this is when the mother-young conflict first begins, first appears, right? During the transition period, some dogs will start regurgitating food for their pups, a wolf trait that we have probably intentionally bred out of most breeds of dogs because we find it unpleasant.
Right.
But it's still there.
Yeah.
This is the basis for the common behavior that many dogs have of eating their own vomit. It is also during the transition phase that pups will start to beg food from their mothers. Wolf pups do this by pawing and biting at the lips of adults returning to the den, leading to the dog that jumps up to kiss me hello, as so many of my clients tell me, is really asking you to regurgitate a meal for it, leading to that adult dog doing that.
Are you saying this is why dogs jump on people?
It can be an instinctive reason, right? Instinctive basis of behavior of why dogs would jump up, paw you, lick your face, all those types of things. It's rooted in this behavior.
Dang.
And they do it when they're puppies. We think it's cute. They continue it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Super interesting.
Yeah. He goes on to say, the transition period from 2 to 4 weeks of age is the beginning of the most important period in the young dog's life. For the first time, his senses are being stimulated, and he will forever be influenced by the images that now form in his mind. How a dog behaves at any given time in his life is a result of a constant and fluid interplay between his genetic potential and his environment. At every stage of the development of the dog's mind, he receives a feedback from his environment, and this can profoundly affect the course of his development and his unique character. So that's the transitional period.
Yeah.
And he did say, his environment's playing an effect on his behavior long term.
Yeah.
So again, as a breeder, as someone that's getting a puppy from a breeder, it's your job to do your due diligence and select a breeder that's going to be making your pup the best it can be, right? The environment plays a role in that.
Yeah.
All right, moving on, the socialization period starting at 4 weeks of age. The social life of the dog can only begin when he has developed all of his communication facilities. Remember, we got all the senses.
Right.
Most of these have matured to near adult conformation by the time the pup is near 4 weeks old. Until now, his only really important relationship has been one of care dependency with his mother. His mother's taking care of him or her, and they are dependent on the mother.
Yeah.
During the socialization period, this relationship will gradually evolve to one of dominance submission, which is how dogs operate.
Yeah.
We know they operate in dominance and submission.
Yeah.
Right? The obvious beginning of the change in relationship from care dependency to dominant submission occurs when the mother starts to walk away from the pups as they start to nurse. This is called weaning.
Right.
This usually occurs during the 4th to 5th weeks. A scientist named Wilson has observed that the amount of nursing, the time for final weaning, and the evolving interaction between the mother and her pups during this period can have a permanent effect on the mind of the pups. He looked at 6 different maternal behaviors: nursing time, number of inhibited bites, growls, mouth threats, nibbling, and licking of puppies. When pups tried to suckle, some mothers punished their pups with inhibited bites more than others did. And for those who don't know, an inhibited bite is a proper correction from a dog. Well, they'll grab another dog with their mouth but not cause any damage.
Right.
That's what we call an inhibited bite. So some mothers did punish the pups with inhibited bites as they're weaning them. These pups started to show passive submission by lying on their backs to be licked earlier than other pups. Growls and mouth threats also led to passive submission. The severity that the mother uses in altering this relationship from care dependency to dominant submission has a direct bearing on how that pup will ultimately behave with people. So the way the mother is changing this relationship can have a direct bearing on how the pup will behave with people, which again is why choosing the right mother is super important.
Right.
The way a mother alters the care dependency relationship to one of dominance and submission has a lifelong effect on the dog's mind. But as with everything else, there are no cut and dry answers. Learning about dominant submission through maternal punishment is absolutely necessary for the pup. So if you have a pup that was found on the side of the road, no mother, you're missing out on all of this learning. It doesn't mean it won't be a good dog.
Yeah.
It just means there might be some struggles along the way.
Right.
Pups raised under non-punishing conditions were later impossible to train. Interesting.
So having no accountability.
No
right?
accountability. So positive only. They were later impossible
long-term
to train.
issues.
Yeah.
Or issues down the road, right?
That's right. He continues on. What a pup is really learning when his mother snarls at him as he tries to suckle is not fear, but compromise. Boundaries.
Yeah.
We all have boundaries in our life, right? Boundaries with our families, boundaries with our friends, boundaries at work, boundaries with our dogs. We should have those.
Right.
Unfortunately, a lot of people don't have those.
Yeah. Yeah.
He continues on. Relationships are not as simple as dominant and submissive, but are multi-layered. It explains how there can be a pecking order within a pack of dogs or within a pack of people and dogs. So it's more complex than we think, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But there is a hierarchy,
I mean, it explains a lot, or,
Yeah. And
gives you insight.
as we're shifting from care dependency with mother to dominance and submission, now the fact that you have litter mates helps you continue to learn as a puppy. So he says, the litter is a complex but temporary society, and in it, play activity is the most common and important interactive behavior. Play activity has a number of functions. Socially speaking, there are 3. So as the litter mates are starting to wean off the mother, they're doing more amongst themselves. Right? He said, number 1, play stimulates communal behavior, creating social bonds. Right? If you were in a wild dog pack, you need those bonds because you're hunting together. You're operating together, right? But most domesticated dogs are going to go different ways, right? Number 2, play affects and molds adult social behavior because you're having trial and error, right? As you're learning to behave with other animals. 3, play predicts the future dominant relationships within the pack. So you can see in dog play behavior which ones are going to be more dominant, which ones are going to be more submissive. Right. They get to play that out in their playtime. Play, of course, has many more functions, all of which have an influence on the dog's behavior. Play promotes physical dexterity and mental flexibility. Play improves coordination, right? It's kind of like you're learning all these, like practicing for a sport game. Play permits experimentation under safe conditions. Play teaches action patterns. Play allows for safe exploration. Play stimulates inventiveness. It teaches problem solving. Play is a lifelong activity in dogs. Play is a natural, inherited canine activity as strong in wolves as it is in Yorkies. That's what he says.
It's important to play and figure out.
A couple of Yorkies playing. I mean, that's a time right there. That's a time. But I mean, it's super important. It helps the dog. It helps the puppies start to learn how to use their bodies, right?
Communicate with each other.
Communication, coordination, all these different types of things. So if you have a puppy that was a one puppy litter, right, that could be a problem because you're missing out on a lot. If you have a puppy that came from a rescue, no mother, no litter mates, that could be a problem. You're missing out on a lot. I'm not saying it's a bad dog. I'm just saying there might be some more work for you to do to get this dog to where it needs to be. Right? When dogs play, the standard rules of interrelationships are temporarily suspended. Reality is fleetingly suspended, but comes back instantly if play gets too rough or if they are distracted. What that means is, like in the pack, they have dominant and submissive roles. They have a hierarchy. When they're playing, they suspend that. But if the play gets too rough or if they're distracted by something, they snap right back into it. This is why if you see two dogs playing, they're having a good time, then all of a sudden one gets, what we would call angry,
or
and corrects one. That's what happened. Right.
I've seen that before.
All right, continuing on. Animals that play more, that have more sensory stimulation during the critical socialization period, grow up to be more intelligent and highly evolved. Play develops the pup's mind because it leads him into different situations where he has to innovate solutions. It accelerates experience. Other things about play. Adversaries can be tested in a ritualized manner through play fighting. So, I mean, again, if there's two guys or girls that are kind of like dominant, they're kind of testing each other out. They can do that in a ritualized manner through play fighting. Dogs that are isolated from other dogs during this period in their lives are often hyper-aggressive toward other dogs. They have unhealthy responses toward other dogs, which we've seen, definitely. All right. He also says that play activity teaches the inhibited bite, the soft mouth, which we already talked about. So there's a problem with a lot of dogs that don't know how to give an inhibited bite. They don't know that. That could be because they were not able to play with other dogs, at this age, things like that. All right. Continuing on. He said, between 3 and 8 weeks of age, pups should be exposed to potentially fearful stimuli in the environment. Kids, aerosol sprays, vacuum cleaners, vets, postmen. Guess those are scary. Cats, street noises. And this sensitization should continue throughout the socialization period up to 12 weeks of age and on into the juvenile period. Remember, this is the most sensitive period of a puppy's life. Dogs that don't meet people until after the socialization period can be antisocial, difficult to train, and dingo-like in their fight flight, and freeze behavior. Dogs that don't meet other dogs during the socialization period are fearful, can make poor mothers, and are inhibited or overly reacted when they meet other dogs. So again, we've talked about this, but we're really hammering it home.
Yeah.
There's a lot of consequences to not getting the socialization in properly.
Yeah.
He goes on. From a veterinarian standpoint, a major conflict arises from this information. For as all dog owners know, standard medical advice dictates that pups should not meet other pups until at least 2 weeks after the final puppy vaccination, which is given at the earliest at 12 weeks of age.
Right.
So this is where we start to get into conflict.
Yeah.
Because your vet's telling you, don't take your dog out, don't do this, don't keep it at home, keep it safe.
Right.
He says some vaccine manufacturers suggest isolation until a final parvovirus inoculation is given, as late as 20 weeks of age. But what happens to the pup's developing mind, if he is isolated for so long? The answer to this depends on what role you want your dog to play in your life. So again,
So
what are you going to do?
Is it just up to the owner?
Yeah, it's up to the owner.
Yeah, I mean, you
What's
got to
bet-
make a decision.
What's better for your dog, though?
I mean, from everything, all the information we just heard, it's you need to socialize them.
Right.
You want them to play, and we see all the benefits that play provides to your dog, but also have them interact with people, have them interact with other dogs, loud noises. That's not a socializing thing, but
Right.
Get them outside, get them used to all these objects moving around, trash cans, delivery trucks, etc.
Whatever you want your dog to be able to do with you, go ahead and get it going.
Yeah.
I will say when Bane was a puppy, we were taking him a bunch of places.
Yeah.
He ended up getting kennel cough, which it was okay, but I know that can be super bad. But you're running the risk of exposure to something that can make your dog sick. But in my opinion, that risk is warranted because of the long-term effects on the dog's mind if you don't do that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying?
And probably with modern medicine, you're able to,
Yeah, I mean, you can go to the vet and get whatever.
Medication.
But just know that your vet's going to tell you, don't do this, don't do that.
Yeah.
Those are things this information is critical.
I mean,
So,
it makes sense too,
Yeah, definitely makes sense.
For the growth of the brain and, personality.
Definitely. All right. I just popped open the Jocko Go.
Oh, yeah.
50-50 tactical
Pop the top.
tea and lemonade.
That's a good flavor.
So I recommend that you listening get one.
Go ahead and crack a top.
Crack it right now
Pop the top.
as you continue to listen. All right, moving on. We're talking about dominance and submission. Or first of all, backing it up, I skipped over a little section here I had highlighted. He says, the degree or intensity of play at this stage is also a portent of the future. Pups that are too playfully aggressive during the socialization stage make difficult pets in the future. This is when they learn most about dominance and submission. If there is any one rule to follow at this stage of a pup's life, it is a simple one. Never ever play fight, especially during the socialization period, with potentially aggressive and dominant dogs. If you do, you'll be creating dramatic problems for the future. Which brings up a good point. I never recommend wrestling with your dog hands-on, even puppies.
Right.
Because you don't want them to think you're a litter mate.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You can play with them with toys. You can play little games with them. You can do your mental games. But let puppies play with puppies.
Yeah.
Let them roughhouse together. Don't let your kid do it. You don't do it because you're going to create problems later.
Yeah.
Because this is what the dog's doing. They're doing dominance and submission.
Yeah.
That's how they operate. You think you're playing. You're a human. You operate differently.
Right.
This is going back to what we first said. See things from your dog's point of view, not just yours.
Right.
All right, moving on. We're talking about establishment of the dominance hierarchy. So he says, in order to establish this pecking order of dominance and submission, dogs have a sophisticated system of mostly mute signaling and communication that becomes well developed during the socialization periods. So he's talking about playing, right? The litter mates establishing this. And he says, The behaviors in pups look comical to us, but they are not comical to the litter mates. Mm-hmm. This is dead serious business. The dominant pup will initiate an activity, stare, and perhaps stand over his litter mate, then growl and possibly attack. Dominant activities, what the behaviorist calls agnostic behavior, take the following forms. All of these are apparent during the pup's socialization stage. So I'm going to list out some forms of dominant activities that if you're watching pups playing, you might be able to pick up on it.
Right.
Number 1, stalking other pups with head and tail down, hindquarters raised and ears erect. 2, chasing, ambushing, or pouncing upon litter mates. 3, standing over the litter mate, head and tail erect, neck arched. The dominant pup often forms a T shape with its adversary by placing its head over the other's neck. Mm-hmm. 4, circling the litter mate while stiffly wagging the tail and walking imperiously. 5, actual attacking and biting, especially around the neck and face. 6, hackles up. 7, bearing of weapons, snarling and showing incisors and canines. 8, direct stare at the litter mate with dilated pupil, showing eye. 9, shoulder slams, or less frequently, hip slams. 10, standing with forepaws on the litter mate's back. 11, boxing. 12, mounting either with or without pelvic thrusts. 13, wagging only the tip of an erect tail. 14, ears completely erect or completely flattened against head. And 15, play fighting taken to excess. Using these displays, the dominant dog implies power to his litter mates, and we do exactly the same later in the pup's life when we start training him.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of stuff. So, but if you're a breeder or if you're someone that's selecting a puppy and you're noticing these things, it's like, okay, that could be a potentially dominant dog, which can potentially cause problems later, potentially not.
Right.
You know, it's a lot to take in. It's a lot that could possibly happen. Mm-hmm. Going on, he says, just as important as the dominance behaviors are the defense and submissive behaviors. These surrendering behaviors are vital to prevent unnecessary injuries or even death, and they too become finely developed during this 2-month period up to 12 weeks of age. Pups show submission in these ways. 1, tail between legs, ears depressed, head hung low, eyes averted from dominant dog, looking to the side.
Yeah.
2, submissive grin with lips retracted back. 3, licking lips, sometimes sneezing and showing incisors at the same time. You think your dog's just sneezing, or is it actually a submissive behavior?
Read this book.
There's more. There's more to their behavior than you think.
Yeah.
4, rolling onto back. 5, lying on side, lifting hind leg, exposing genital region. 6, urinating. You know, like the pup peeing. 7, defecating. I mean, pups will poop out of stress. You know, submission. 8, remaining stationary while aggressor circles or places paws on shoulders. 9, remaining stationary while aggressor mounts. So these are all signs of submissive pup.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Or overly submissive pup. I mean, if you see these, again, it's just something to take into account because a submissive pup could turn into insecurity, which could be a problem if not properly socialized.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the submissive traits are maybe easier to pick out than the dominant traits, or like easier to like recognize it, you know, because of the body language that the dog's going to be displaying.
I was just having a conversation with someone the other day, and they could not believe I was telling them about some behaviors, like blinking.
Right.
Blinking is a submissive behavior.
Right.
They could not believe that dog body language was that layered.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're always
the number one way for them to communicate.
Most of the things they're doing, I'm sure that sometimes they do things and they're just like, whatever.
Yeah.
But majority of the time, every one of their movements has some kind of signal or meaning.
Even yawning, right?
Even yawning.
Yeah.
And so most people, if they have a dog that's not really a problem, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But the people like me that have had problem dogs, you become finely attuned to these things.
Yeah.
And it means more to you.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But if you're a dog trainer, you got to know this stuff. You got to know the layers. If you're going to be high level.
Yeah, it's definitely going to take you to the next level in understanding how to work with whatever dog you got.
You can't be a dog trainer and not understand the levels of this stuff.
Yeah.
Not going to happen. Yeah. All right, continuing on, he says that a dog doesn't expect to be treated like a human. A dog expects a human to act like a dog, to participate in group activities, to play, to hunt, to sleep in the same den. So again, when we're working with our dogs every day, we want to satisfy their instinctual needs. These are some of their instinctual needs, right? But remember, your dog does not expect to be treated like a human. They're expecting you to act like a dog.
So what you're saying is my dog needs to sleep in the bed.
No. It depends. I ain't gonna lie, my dogs sleep in the bed. Yeah. Good to go. They got to get to that point, though.
Yeah. That's a joke.
All right. Moving on, Chapter 7, Later Learning. Our influence on the developing mind. Although the patterns of his future behavior are set in the dog's mind during the socialization period, it is over the next months that he learns the relevance of these behaviors and how to use them. His learning capacity is great, and the speed with which he learns is considerable. Learning is fast because the blackboard, his mind, is still relatively uncluttered. The more he experiences in life, however, the more difficult it becomes to instill new thoughts and ideas in his mind. The greatest problem in understanding the dog's mind now occurs. It's our problem, not the dog's, for it is we who make the mistake of treating dogs as not quite as animal as other animals. You see how he's saying the same things, just different ways?
He just keeps pounding the same, the same facts over and over.
He goes on, they might seem almost human to many of us, but that's only because we recognize human attributes in their behavior: fear, hunger, the desire to care for others and to be cared for in return. These aspects of their behavior are all part of their culture, and although we recognize them, they might be displayed for slightly different reasons than those we have. Again, there's different layers to their behaviors. They always have a purpose with it. Mm-hmm. The unfortunate consequence is that many people genuinely do during this formative period in the dog's life treat him as a member of the family, democratically issuing conditional clauses to their pets when they misbehave. If you jump up on the dining room table once more, I'll be really angry. As hard as it might be to emotionally accept the fact, we must remember that the dog's thinking process, cognition, is not as complex as ours. Dogs don't think symbolically. To them, fear is fear. Sex is sex. What you get is what you see. What you see is what you get. The only exception to that is the occasional manifestation of psychosomatic illness. For example, a feigned lameness to get attention, based on a previous real lameness that did evoke a sympathetic response.
That's interesting.
Dogs are masters of manipulating their environment. So if they were previously injured and they got certain responses that rewarded them, they can literally fake that.
I've seen this.
I've seen it before a bunch of times.
I think I've seen it for videos of a dog, but I've seen this in a cat before. I've seen this on TikTok where a cat will be outside or the dog will be outside and it'll be at the back porch, wants to come in, and it'll be like holding its paw up, you know, and the owner's like, what's going on with your paw? Or maybe the owner will know, and they'll open the door and they'll just walk right in, you know, like walking on that paw, but they're holding it up, you know, like, oh, I got my paw injured, you know, I can't walk.
Yeah.
I need to come in. I need that attention.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, or I need that, you need to let me in.
They will definitely manipulate us.
Yeah.
And they're definitely manipulating us all the time.
And then they do. They're like, you're a sucker.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. Moving on. Now we're talking about rewards. So he has, we're getting into kind of his dog training sections of the book. So I'm just touching on a few things in these sections. He's got a lot of good information in here, but again, some of this is kind of outdated in my opinion. A lot of it still applies, but a lot of it, you know, has newer ways of doing things.
Right.
So in this section, he talks about whenever possible, and especially during the juvenile learning period, we should withhold the most potent rewards, food and touch. Only give them at the proper time to suit or elicit proper behavior. Don't shower your dog with food, especially your food rewards. Don't shower your dog with touch. They have to earn it,
right?
You know? He said that gentle petting has a calming effect, but lengthy petting, while giving us emotional satisfaction, can actually mean dominance to the dog and result in a chronic attention seeking from him. You ever have that dog that like is just constantly seeking attention?
Yeah.
Gets intense, you know?
And then they'll just over and over and then you get tired of it. And
keep
just,
doing it.
Yeah.
It gets out of control.
Yeah. So that's a dominant trait.
Can be.
I know who does that.
Who?
Bane.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
He does it to me.
Oh, yeah.
He gets me.
Oh, he's bad.
He gets me with it,
He's
too.
bad. He'll come up and put his head right in your face.
Yeah.
Or his head right in your hand.
Yeah, he'll throw your hand up on his head.
Yeah, I'll literally pull my hand away from him. I'm like, nope, go walk away, you know? But he's bad at that for sure.
Yeah.
All right, talking about punishment. And as we're going on here, I just want to reiterate, we've talked about this before in podcast episode 28, 27. 27, we talked about learning theory. But punishment and the actual conditioning phraseology does not mean like hitting a dog or anything like that. It means doing something that's going to prevent that behavior from occurring in the future. So try to get your terminology right to you listening, so that, you know, these types of words make sense, right? Because if you're thinking every time I say the word punishment that you have to hit something or somebody, that's not true.
Right.
It means using some type of learning theory tactic to prevent that behavior, undesirable behavior, from happening again. Now, right here, he reflects back on the wolf pack. So he says, natural punishments in the wolf pack can be extreme. Dominance is maintained through ritual displays, and wolves rarely fight. They don't want to fight, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But if they have to, they will.
Yeah.
He says, when they do, the fights are savage. The punishment to the loser is traumatic and severe. Through our intervention in breeding, many of the ritualized behaviors to avoid fights have been lost, which is bad. Rituals, as far as body communication to avoid fights, helps prevent fights.
Right.
But because we've done so much through breeding of dogs, we're losing that part of their genetic footprint, you know?
Interesting.
Dogs fight far more frequently than wolves do, and they use fighting as a punishment in dominance, territorial, sexual, possessive, and rivalry disputes. So, you know, not good to go.
Yeah.
Help your dog not fight so much by getting the early learning done and the imprinting done.
Yeah.
Right? All right, so moving on to the next, here we go. Still in the same chapter, later learning. Even though we have selectively bred down many of the wild traits in dogs, they have not been eliminated. Hunting, tracking, stalking, biting, shaking, killing. These are all normal canine behaviors, but where is the outlet for these natural tendencies and basic instincts in companion dogs? Again, most people with pets are not giving their pets their instinctual needs.
Yeah.
Because of the unique nature of the relationship of the dog to us, he is dependent on our initiative for his mental and physical activities.
Right.
I've been preaching this for like 6 years at this point.
Still do.
Still do every day.
And continue.
Your dog needs mental and physical activity, mental and physical exercise, mental and physical stimulation on a daily basis to satisfy their instinctual needs.
Yeah.
When we fail in this area, we are confronted with the behavioral problems that all too frequently develop. And we blame it on our dog. It's our fault.
Yeah.
You know, don't get a dog that needs above average mental and physical activity every day than you're willing to do.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Do your research, know what kind of dog you're getting, you know, or maybe you get a dog that's super high energy, you know, above normal. Hey, your responsibility.
That's right. He says we should stimulate the dog's mind in similar ways to those in which it is naturally stimulated, but channel this energy into useful activities, which he divides into nose work, problem solving, learning, and balance.
Brain games.
We have to think like dogs. Get into their minds if we're going to be successful. Teaching a dog as a pup that calling his name is associated with petting and friendliness, and at the same time calling his name to discipline him when he messes in the house is a sure way to produce a mixed up pup. That's going to create anxiety. It's going to create insecurity. So you got to be consistent with your expectations, with your communications.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If a dog's natural energy is not properly channeled, he can indulge in destructive behavior. And he has a picture here of a dog chewing some shoes. I hear a lot of people complain about that. Your dog needs that mental and physical stimulation. You know what I'm saying?
If your dog's your best friend, you know, I mean, treat them like it, you know, meet their instinctual needs. You know, that's going to be the best way to increase your bond.
I mean, your routine, your daily routine, your daily ritual is going to be your best friend in that regard because it allows your dog to rely upon outlets for their mental, physical.
Yeah. They know it's coming.
They know it's coming. They know when and where it's going to happen for the most part, right? It's okay to have some daily fluctuations.
Yeah.
When there's too much fluctuation, then it's bad, you know?
Yeah.
But find a process that works for you. I know I know that I like getting up, letting my dogs out, you know, and then after breakfast, having a morning walk with them. In the evening, having a evening exercise session. You know, I live on a property. I don't live in a neighborhood. So it's easy for me to give my dogs that smell stimulation because I can let them go walk in the woods and let them smell whatever, all the animals and stuff that was around, you know?
Yeah.
It's easier for me to do that than someone that lives in a neighborhood. So if you live in a neighborhood, you might have to rely upon your scent games, your brain games that we've done YouTube videos on like searching for food, searching for balls, those types of things.
Yeah, I'll even do in my house. I'll do
in your house
smelling games.
Same
I'll put them in a downstay in one room.
Yep.
And I'll do a small line spaced out of food like kibble or something, and then I'll start to in a straight line fashion start to place them in like little corners or something.
Right.
Let them they love freaking doing it.
Yeah.
You know, because they're like already drooling because they know they're going to be eating.
Oh yeah.
But in order to find the food, they got to sniff it, work their brain.
Right.
You know, and do that 2 or 3 times. I have 2 dogs, so I do it 2 or 3 times. Once they finish the route or whatever, go back, put them in a downstay. They got to hold the downstay while the other dog participates. So you're still working them mentally. Yeah. You know, to hold that and then do that 2 or 3 times. Take a break. You know, end the game. Do another one later. You know. I
miss having like a sunroom. My old house had a sunroom.
Yeah.
And I used to just put like random things in there and I'd hide things and I'd be like, all right, go find it. And it'd take them a while. They'd sniffing all over the place. If you have a spare room, that's a great way to get that mental, that scent in, you know, but the other senses too are important. Like, you know, he mentioned shaking, you know, grabbing something, shaking it. You know how dogs like to thrash things. So play tug with them. Give them a toy they can do that with, you know, those types of things. So try to think of things you can do with your dog that's going to stimulate those senses and maximize upon those senses. Sometimes maybe you take them out to a new place. I know you put your dogs in the car, you'll drive out to a park or a trail or whatever. You get them to a new environment. You can trigger those senses. And I know one of your dogs loves smelling things, you know?
Yeah, I'll take them to a park because my neighborhood's really small, you know, so rather than walking in a loop, you know, it's boring for me, boring for them because there's not a whole lot of smells because there's a lot of driveways and stuff. I take them to like a local park and I walk that, you know, every day And before we even do our walks, I'll give them 10 minutes of sniffing time, on leash, because there's other dogs and stuff in the environment. But I'll just let them sniff, you know, for one to go potty, but two to get that stimulation because, for the rest of the day they're in my house, so I let them work that brain and then we go on our walks.
I remember when I first moved out to my property, I think JoJo was staying with me for a couple of days or something. Yeah. I let her outside off leash, but with the remote collar on, of course. And she was going crazy, sniffing.
She'll disappear.
She disappeared into the woods sniffing. I was like, oh, where'd she go?
I mean, she'll do that when I come out to your place now. I'll let her go, off leash, you know, and she'll just let her nose carry her. You got to keep an eye on her because she'll walk away.
She blends in too with that brindle coat.
Yeah, she's camouflaged into the pine straw. Yeah. She legit blends in. And it's like, where the hell did she go?
Yeah, Anyway, so definitely good to remind yourself of, you know what I'm saying? All right, so chapter 8 gets into social behavior, specifically aggression. This chapter meant a lot to me when I was learning about aggression. I think it's going to mean a lot to a lot of people. And the first type of aggression that we're going to talk about is dominance aggression. I know we did cover this section in the previous podcast when we first started the podcast. I don't remember the episode number off the top of my head, but you can go back and look at the earlier ones if you want to hear me talk about it again, but we're going to cover it now. So he starts off by saying dogs are pack animals. They simply don't expect equality. So, I mean, that's just something we all need to remember. They have a hierarchy. We have a hierarchy in our world. We have a president. We have a governor. We have a mayor. We have a police chief. There's a hierarchy. Not everyone can be the top dog. Right. You know what I'm saying? Dogs are pack animals. They simply don't expect equality. The dog's natural genetic predisposition is to find his place in the pecking order, the dominance hierarchy. All right, so we're starting off there. So that's what dogs are naturally wanting to do. He goes on to say that between 6 months and a year of age, the apparent sudden, unprovoked aggressive attacks of dominant aggression, usually against members of the immediate family, frequently don't occur for another 1 to 2 years. The onset of these attacks coincides with the time of puberty in wolves. So to kind of dumb that down, I'm just going to say if you're dealing with dominance aggression, you're probably going to start to see signals of it around 1 to 2 years. But do keep in mind that when the puppies are puppies, like we talked about earlier, you can detect a lot of dominant behaviors just from observing puppies playing and how they're, are they controlling a nipple, all that kind of stuff, you know, from the mother, that kind of stuff.
Right.
He says dominance aggression can be provoked in a myriad of ways and is a pack problem, right? Dominance aggression is a pack problem because we don't have a set structure in our pack. That's why its head roots up. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What happens is the dog perceives his owner to be weak. If my dog comes over and asks to be pet and I pet her, I'm rewarding her initiative. But at the same time, I'm telling her I obey her commands. Dominance can be as subtle as that. When dogs interpret our behavior as a reaction to theirs, their natural inclination is to feel more assertive and dominant. Yeah. Which is what most people are doing with their dogs at home. Mm-hmm. You just said earlier that my dog Bane, you come over, he's coming over, he's putting his head in your hand to force the pet. Yeah. That's dominance. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like when he does that to me, I'm like, nope, go lay down or something, So again, this is just things dogs are doing all the time. He is a dominant dog, so he's always going to be trying to do little things like that. But he's learned how to control it now as we've gone through our process,
Right.
Dominance aggression is both inherited and learned. Although 85% of clinical cases occur in males, the hormonal influence on this behavior probably occurred near birth when the male's pup was masculinized by a surge of testosterone. This is why castration has little beneficial effect on correcting this unpleasant behavior. He goes on to talk about prevention. Dominance aggression can be best avoided through careful selection of a dog in the first place. How are you going to carefully select a dog? By listening to this podcast, by analyzing this information. If you don't know how to select a dog, you ask one of our expert dog trainers to help you select a dog. I've done this by people across the country have sent me videos. I'm like, send me another video of this, send me another video. I'm telling them what to ask the breeder for. I need a video of this, need a video of that, so that we can assess it from a remote standpoint. You don't have to be right there with them.
Yeah.
You know? He goes on to say that we know that puppy testing is not a predictor of future general behavior, but pups that test positive for dominance do grow up to be dominant. Avoid these pups, and avoid pups from parents that are known to be aggressive in a dominant way.
Keep an eye on the parents.
Definitely. The parents are going to give you good indications of what the puppy can be.
Yeah.
So he's saying avoid them. I mean, if you're a professional and you know how to handle a dominant dog, you know how to structure yourself, you'll be fine. But if you're like me, back in, I don't even remember what year it was, 2015 or whatever, maybe before that, 2015, I got Bane, little puppy. There's a lot of signs that he was dominant from me looking back on it now. You know, I'm like, oh, yeah, whatever, and get him and just reinforce the dominance over the years, and he starts turning on you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Then you got a problem. You got a big problem.
Yeah. All right, so, again, he says the absolute law is that he must do something for you before you do something for him. So he's talking about how to prevent dominance, aggression. So that's having a structure. He says that your dog will enjoy knowing where his place is in your pecking order. It's natural to dogs. They like that, you know. Treating dominance aggression. He gives you some steps here for treating it. He says your primary goal in treating dominance aggression is to avoid having people injured, while at the same time getting your dog to assume submissive and non-aggressive behaviors in the circumstances where he previously thought he was top dog, where he was top dog. Whenever possible, avoid the specific situations or stimuli that you know provoke dominance aggression. For example, if brushing your Yorkie provokes him to attack you, temporarily stop brushing him. And the reason for that is you don't want them to practice that dominant behavior, right? Because whatever the dog's practicing, they're going to keep doing. So one of the tactics is stop doing that as you work on it. You know, stop provoking it, stop triggering it as you're working on it from other angles, so that you're not triggering it because you don't want them to practice it, you know?
And that's not a win in their eyes. Doesn't count as a win in the dog's
eyes. If they're getting to practice it and they're winning, you're just working backwards.
Well, I'm saying if you're brushing the Yorkie and you decide to stop brushing it if it starts growling at you or something.
Oh, like you just...
Is that a win in the dog eyes?
Well, yeah. Yeah. But you just stop brushing altogether.
Oh, you're saying in general, don't brush them.
Right.
For a
while. In general, don't brush them as you're working on the dominance aggression in the other ways. So you're avoiding the behavior that's triggering the aggression so that you can work on the mind other ways.
Okay.
He goes on to say, the dominant dog must learn that from now on, nothing is for free.
Right.
The first object of treatment is to disorient his mind. Force him to reevaluate his relationship with you and your family. Be consistent and have the most dominant member of the household, the pack, take over training. This, incidentally, is not necessarily the man of the household. In practice, I frequently see dominant aggressive problems in pets caused by putty, soft husbands coming home from work and undoing all the good discipline instilled during the day by their wives. Shout out to all you wives out there getting after it.
Hardcore moms.
And your soft, putty husband is undoing all the training you're doing at home.
Quit being a softie.
He says, retrain or train your dog for the first time to sit, stay, come, down, downstay, and heel. The downstay is very important because this is a subservient position. It's a submissive position. Right. You may need professional help in teaching these routines. As preconditions to training, remove all of your dog's valued assets, his toys, bones, even his blanket. This is serious business. Do not give in to your human emotions. Think only on his terms. You want to be in command and will do anything to usurp the power he has usurped from you. And remember, aggression is the most common cause of death in young dogs. They don't die as a direct consequence of aggression. They are destroyed by us because of it. Avoid confrontations in which your dog may win. Any winning on his part puts retraining back considerably. And don't physically punish a dominant, aggressive dog. Hitting him can stimulate further dominance.
Right.
I mean, that's powerful. That whole paragraph right there gets me amped up, honestly.
Don't fall into the pity trap, right?
I mean, you don't have to. He said, don't hit him. You don't have to hit him. You could do a leash correction on a dominant dog. That dog will turn on you in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
That dog will destroy you because they have that biofeedback going. You know what I'm saying? They have so much power in their brain.
Yeah.
You have to do this systematically, right? And I'm not going to go into the detail on how I do it. We've done it in other episodes. Maybe we should do another one on dominance, but there's a systematic way to do this that will work. It will just take time because I've done it myself.
Right.
And I had a extremely severe case.
Yeah.
You know,
where he was turning on you.
Yeah, he was turning on me, and it got to the point where my physical strength was the only thing keeping me from getting tore up.
Yeah.
Because I could physically hold him up against a wall or something like that. You know. He goes on here to remind us. He says castration has little effect on dominance aggression.
There you go.
So
if
answer. You think that's going to solve your problem, not really going to solve your problem.
Right. I got you amped up.
So that's all we're going to cover on dominance aggression for now. But that's basically the majority of his section on it. I mean, this just hits home for me because it's what I went through myself.
Yeah.
I mean, it is serious.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, people with little dogs, they have dominance aggression. Not a huge deal because it's a little dog.
Right.
But when you have a big dog, it's no joke.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
No joke. And it's a pack problem. Structure is going to be the most important thing. Having proper relationship is going to be the most important thing.
Yeah.
But what you're doing from the time you get your puppy and before that, choosing the right puppy, choosing the right mother, choosing the right breeder, setting up the mother for success during the prenatal period, all that leads to this moment when you're struggling with dominance aggression. You know what I'm saying? It's intense.
Boom.
All right, moving on to the next type of aggression he's going to cover, which is possessive aggression, including competitive aggression and sibling rivalry. He says that sibling rivalry occurs when two dogs are so similar, they find it difficult to determine which is dominant.
Interesting.
And this is sometimes called littermate syndrome, you know, when you have two littermates that don't really get along.
Right.
This learning problem occurs most frequently in dogs that resemble each other in size, sex, and age, and is usually triggered by competition for food, toys, a sleeping place, or our attention. Had to get a quick sip.
Yeah.
Dogs don't expect to live in equality with other dogs or with us for that matter. Democracy is a misplaced ideology in the canine world. Their minds work differently, but we find this a difficult concept to accept because it's alien to the way most of us think. Kind owners who punish bully dogs and elevate submissive ones create conflict in their dogs' minds because to their thinking, what we are doing is unnatural. Jealousy over attention from the owner, possessiveness over a toy or a bone, rivalry over who sleeps in the favorite spot. These are all manifestations of problems and dominance behavior where a hierarchy has not been properly established. So establishing structure in your home, in your pack, establishing a proper hierarchy is what's going to resolve all of these problems. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if you have a dog, he said that, owners who punish bully dogs and elevate submissive ones create conflict. You know, if this is happening, if you have a bully dog, correction, go spot. Both dogs are going to spot. They're getting treated equally.
Right.
Because I'm the pack leader.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Interesting. And the same thing for if, like with the favorite spot, like he was saying, like if one dog is taking the favorite spot on the couch where the other dog likes to sleep, but they both like that spot, and the dog who's not in that area wants to be in that area. I mean, so it's fair for the pack owner, you saying to the dog who wants to be there and maybe is trying to push that dog out, like, hey, go somewhere else or redirect them somewhere else or put them on, like a pet cat, put them on spot.
You're the pack leader. You make the rules.
Yeah.
So what you allow is going to keep happening.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to direct things at certain times. Like Bane, for example. If Georgia, one of my other dogs, let's say he's laying down in a spot, she's walking by. She likes to be a little nosy sometimes.
Yeah.
He's laying down, he'll snap at her. I'll be like, no, bump.
Right.
Correct him. And then, let them do their thing. If it persists, no, bump, go spot.
Right.
Sometimes Georgia will have to go to her spot too. Sometimes she'll be allowed to keep walking around. So as the pack leader, you're just going to dictate, what needs to happen at whatever times.
Yeah.
That's what training helps you do.
Yeah.
Continuing on. Possessive aggression is the variation of simple dominance that dogs most frequently direct against children. In the dog's mind, it's a true case of sibling rivalry. He might know that adults are leaders and that he leaves their food alone, but at the same time sense the lack of authority of young children. In the dog's mind, children become competitors for food or affection or play from the leaders of the pack, the parents, and he shows his rivalry by being aggressive with the child. The best prevention, then, is to train the dog from the moment you get him that all members of the household are dominant over him. That means that children who are old enough to do so should be involved in all training. And your structure basically is communicating to the dog that the children are a higher level than them.
Right.
The dog always gets redirected out the children's way. The dog is not allowed to touch children's toys.
Yeah.
The dog is not allowed to interrupt children doing things. And the children have to respect the dog too.
Boundaries. Yeah.
Boundaries.
Gotta have boundaries.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about, dominance. We're talking about social behavior. I have kids. I have a dominant dog too. You know what I'm saying? So how do I do it? This is how I do it, what I'm explaining right now. My kids are, one's 4, one's 6. Both are at certain points involved in some of my dog's training, but they have short attention spans, so they can't do everything the dogs need.
Yeah.
But sometimes my 6-year-old more often will walk with me with the dogs. Sometimes the 4-year-old will, sometimes they won't. Yeah. The 6-year-old likes being more involved in training exercises than the 4-year-old. Right. Also, I've trained my dogs to walk by basically a golf cart. So I can put my kids in the golf cart thing, ride with the kids, let the dogs run with them. So I'm giving my kids attention and giving my kids time, also getting the dogs moving, giving that physical, mental stimulation.
Right.
So when you have kids, it's all about how does a pack operate, combining certain activities together to the best of your ability.
Yeah. And just to show the dog's mentality of the pack mentality, he says that the dog will see the kid as a competition.
Possibly.
Yeah, a competition.
It can if you don't have a structure set up.
Yeah.
Because think about it. The dogs, let's say you're the parent, you're the owner, you're the pack leader.
Yeah.
You're standing in the kitchen. You're cooking food. Your kid comes up wanting to talk to you. Your dog comes up wanting attention because it's used to doing that.
Yeah.
Your kid and dog are both at you at the same time. The dog feels competition going on for you. So then the dog lashes out at your kid or, barks at your kid or whatever.
Yeah.
Not good. You know what I'm saying? How could you have prevented that? By not allowing that situation to happen. Who takes priority? Obviously the kid.
Right.
So you send the dog to spot, dog go spot. The dog goes and lays down. It knows what that is. It knows what to do. You take care of your kid goes off and does its thing. Dog, okay. Now the dog can get up, walk around, come up to you, whatever, if you want it to.
Yeah. Communicating instinctually.
Communication, having your structure in place, having your training in place, it communicates instinctually to the dog, like you said.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Fear aggression. Fear aggression is defensive and is primarily a learned behavior. Because it is learned, it is more treatable. We already know that if a pup is not properly socialized to his environment, if he does not experience sights, smells, and noises during his formative socialization period, that he can develop a fear of the unusual. Fear is the natural self-preservation response of all animals to new or unusual situations. and is the most common response of all captive animals towards humans. Perhaps surprisingly, it is the most common type of aggression that pet dogs exhibit. Fear aggression is the most common cause of dog bites of children. Dogs are scared of kids. They don't know about them. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Fear aggression can be caused by a previous painful experience with a child when, for example, the dog's hair was pulled. Some dogs can even develop a fear of children because they have previously been disciplined or scolded in the presence of the child and associate the child with that experience. This is another reason that if you have kids, training is even more important. Proper training. Because let's say you have a dog, maybe the dog has some insecurity, low level, maybe you don't even know about it. Now you have a kid, you throw a kid into the equation. You start to do what all these people on social media do. You take pictures with your kid on top of your dog, forcing your dog and kid to be together. You think it's good, and whatever, your dog's starting to freak out. Your dog doesn't like it. Mm-hmm. Your dog's developing an association to the child. Eventually it gets to the point, maybe the child grabs the dog's hair, pulls it, whatever. It gets to the point where the dog bites the kid. Now you're mad at your dog, obviously.
Right.
So what could you have done to prevent that? First of all, you could listen to our podcast on dogs and babies to know how to set up your home for success. But also, like we talked about earlier, proper management, proper structure in your home. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Having clear boundaries and clear lines for the dog with the kid and the kid with the dog. You don't allow the kid to go interrupt the dog.
Right.
You don't allow the dog to go up to the kid in certain situations.
Mm-hmm.
He says that inherited fear aggression is a more serious problem. So you can have fear aggression, you can have insecurity fear. That's genetic, it's inherited. You can have it learned, you can have it both ways. So for prevention, he says many forms of fear-induced aggression can be avoided through proper socialization of pups. A young pup will adapt to his environment and he will grow up not being fearful of the noises, smells, and sights he encounters as long as they are assimilated into his brain at an early age. A pup should be exposed to children, postmen, cats, other dogs, traffic noise, crowds, elevators, everything he might conceivably encounter later on in life. If the dog's mind is barraged with sensory stimulation at an early age, he is less likely to be fearful later in life. We cannot express that enough.
Right.
A lot of dogs that I see in what we do at Canine Revolution, a lot of them are fear-based responses, insecurity-based responses. This early socialization we keep talking about is critical. It can prevent all of these problems if done properly, right? Which is part of our mission, getting that information out there through our podcast, through our videos, things like that, and that's one of the reasons why we do that, to try and get this information out there to stop the extreme levels of fear that dogs have, right?
Yeah.
All right.
And it's hard to detect insecurity. I feel like
it can be.
In a lot of
if
cases.
You're not experienced, then you don't know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
He does. He has a little section in here about treatment for fear aggression. There's just 2 points in it I want to highlight real quick. He says, never use punishment to treat fear aggression. It will only make the situation worse. Follow with proper training progression. We've talked about this.
Oh, yeah.
Corrections do have their place in it, but it's not like all these trainers out there. There's a bunch of trainers out there doing things the wrong way. They're training with remote collars on day one. That's the only way they're training.
Yeah.
They're using leash corrections on day one. That's not the way to train. You start off with a foundation of rewarding, build it up, you layer into corrections later. Go to our podcast where we're talking about how to select a dog trainer. Do not select a dog trainer that's using corrections or remote collars on day one. Please do yourself a favor. Don't do it. Next thing he says here, desensitizing by exposing the dog to fearful stimulation at a lower intensity, giving powerful rewards such as food and touch for not showing fear aggression is the best method of training. Remember, stroking your dog to calm him when he shows signs of nervous, fearful aggression exaggerates the problem. You are actually reinforcing his aggressive behavior by rewarding his fear with contact comfort.
There we go.
Which we touched on later.
Yeah.
He said, this process is time consuming, but it works. Prevention is far easier than cure, and many of the types of aggression, this one is the most preventable. Some hard hitters.
It's getting hard. Serious wording here towards the end of the book.
Yeah. All right, then he talks about protective aggression, which can include territorial aggression. But he said that protective aggression, in which a dog protects his home, his car, his garden, which is a yard, and his family, is, of course, one of the strongest values of canine companionship. But it can often become troublesome and must be controlled. We all want a dog that protects our house and our yard, right? But we also want it to be controlled. So how do we balance that dichotomy? Through training.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You're not going to, because you're also creating conflict by like, good boy, barking. And then your friend comes over, no. You know, like,
why are you going after
Right.
why are you going after him? You know, he's friendly. He's a good guy. He's a good guy. Yeah. What's going on?
All right, prevention. Both dominance aggression and fear aggression can be components of protective aggression. This means that proper selection, followed by good socialization, are equally important factors in preventing excessive protective or territorial behavior. Certain breeds, specifically the herding and guarding breeds and most terriers, are genetically programmed to protect. If these dogs are not properly socialized, they are likely to become protective of their territories, but in an undisciplined and uncontrolled fashion. So again, it's all about like what you're allowing your dog to do, training your dog, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
All kind of boils down to around the same points.
Right.
For a lot of this stuff.
Right.
Is proper structure.
All right, a couple more aggression things we're going to talk about for social behavior of aggression. Intermale aggression. Males of all domesticated species, including dogs and us, have a special propensity for fighting with each other.
Hey, what'd you say, buddy? Oh, yeah, come over here and say it to my face.
When two females fight, it's usually because of a conflict in dominance. Intermale aggression is, of course, a specific form of dominance aggression.
I'm the alpha.
Right.
No, I'm the alpha.
Right. Treating intermale aggression.
Yeah.
This is the only form of aggression for which there is a good likelihood for improvement through castration. There is approximately a 60% likelihood that castration will significantly reduce intermale aggression, which honestly isn't that much.
Right. 50%. Right.
But again, training's going to help you. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
The last form of aggression is predatory, which is basically chasing things, right? Which is natural.
Prey drive.
Any breed of dog can behave in a predatory fashion, but a dog is less likely to do so with animals with which it has been socialized. I have dogs. I have chickens. I have dogs that like to be predatory. I had to teach them to not do that to the chickens, as I had to do with my cats too. Treating predatory aggression, he says, this is the most difficult form of aggressive behavior to overcome, simply because it is rooted so deeply in the dog's mind. The rewards are, after all, magnificent: the chase and the kill.
Yeah. Nothing better than grabbing that object or creature, whatever it is.
I mean, if your dog's chasing your cat and all this, you got to train them. You got to, like, if you're, the thing is too, if sometimes you're on top of them and like not letting it happen, then sometimes you're letting them chase the cat, you're beating yourself up.
Right.
Because they're going to, the rewards, the intermittent rewards override what you're doing, the reward of actually getting to do it. So
got to be consistent.
You got to be on top of it.
Yeah.
You know? All right, wrapping this chapter up, he says, aggression develops to its maximum potential by the time a dog is 2.5 years old. We have an ambivalent attitude towards it. On the one hand, we dislike unruly, aggressive dogs. On the other, we admire the dignified, solid, well-mannered canine who eventually turns and uses aggression on the unruly one. We expect our dogs to let our friends enter our homes and cheerfully greet them, but at the same time, prevent intruders from entering and deal with them severely if they do. We fantasize that our dogs will protect us from bears and tigers, yet we expect them to leave sheep and rabbits to graze freely.
Right.
We ask too much of the dog's mind. It is as plastic and malleable as that of any other domestic species, but in the field of aggressive behavior, there have to be compromises between our needs and their abilities.
Right.
So again, a lot of conflict there.
Good way of putting it. Good way of putting
A
it.
lot of conflict there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so moving on to chapter 9. He says, in chapter 9 here is more social behavior, just eating, exploring, eliminating. He says the rules of canine learning will continue to apply throughout the dog's life and will affect all aspects of his social behavior. But once more, remember the overwhelming difference between the dog and all other members of the canine family is that we humans make up the other members of the dog's pack. All his behaviors, the way he eats and eliminates, the comfort that he seeks, the way he explores, his fears and phobias, even the way he has sex, all these behaviors are influenced by us. We have a dramatic effect on the dog's mind, far greater than has been previously recognized. So in this chapter, he's basically listing some of the common instinctive behaviors, and then he kind of explains what they are and, you know, what they're based in. So I'm just going to go through a couple that I think are pretty common for people. First of all, he mentions shaking, throwing, catching, killing. In most dogs, this has been modified to a play activity. We already mentioned that that's a predatory activity, right?
Yeah.
He talks about bringing food back to the den, retrieving, food carrying, gift giving. This natural canine behavior is most apparent in the breeds bred to retrieve game, but can occur in any breed. So, I mean, this is just a natural behavior, right? If your dog carries food around or carries things around, gives things, it's just a natural behavior. Regurgitating. This is a behavior that has been considerably bred down in the dog compared to the wolf. Dogs still do, however, have a sensitive vomiting reflex, and both males and females are still known to regurgitate food. Gnawing and chewing. So if you have a dog that gnaws on your baseboards,
Yep.
or chews on your couch, this is a comfort behavior carried out more frequently by dogs than wolves, simply because we deny dogs much of their natural chewing.
It's like wolves will be chewing on sticks and stuff
Right.
like that.
So what could you do with your dog? You could let them chew on a stick. You could have things for them to chew on in the house. It's also a comfort behavior. Why would you need a comfort behavior? Because you're anxious about something. So you could reduce anxiety through training, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But that's where that's rooted in. Eating grass. Dogs are omnivores. Grass eating is normal. So don't be concerned if your dog's eating grass.
Yeah.
Prey carrying. Some dogs develop the habit of taking their food out of their food bowl, carrying it to another place and eating it there. This is based on the wolf's prey carrying activity. So just some examples there. Continuing on, the dog benefits from activity, and we benefit from their innate abilities, which are superior to ours. It is the rare dog today, however, that is allowed to hunt even in the modified form. The consequence is boredom, one of the most overwhelming factors in the life of most pet dogs. Most of our pets lead restricted, dull lives where the only excitement is the return of members of the family, a little exercise, and eating. So keep that in mind. You got to make sure you're taking care of your dogs and their instinctive behaviors daily. Continuing on, again, he's repeating himself. Eating grass is another normal canine behavior that surprises many dog owners. When a wild canid, a fox or a wolf, for example, captures prey, it eats all of it, including the skin and the intestinal contents. Most of the prey are herbivores, and the intestines are filled with roughage. So that's kind of where they get most of their greenery from. He says, however, others will graze on long grass for the apparent sheer pleasure of eating it.
Yeah.
So don't be concerned if your dog's eating grass.
Yeah.
Continuing on, eating feces can be normal in the sense that is a normal behavior of females to eat the droppings of their pups. It is also a normal behavior of dogs to have an instinctive preference for decaying food, for rotting carcasses, rubbish, and feces. There is, however, no uniform explanation for the habit. if you have a dog that poops in his kennel and eats it, for example.
Yeah.
But if you think about dogs out in the wild, they're going to eat things that are already dead, that are rotting,
Yeah, no preference there.
He thinks that feces eating is self-rewarding in many ways, right?
Interesting.
There's a lot of different ways you could overcome that, through training.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, some of the reasons why it might be going on, as we mentioned.
Yeah.
Then he goes into obesity. He goes on a tangent about obesity. I'm just going to highlight some parts. He said, it's extremely rare to see fat canines of any species in the wild, and this is because most animals have a refined ability to adjust their consumption of food to meet their energy requirements. Most estimates in Europe and North America suggest that 1 out of every 3 dogs is fat. How can this be when they are so finely biologically tuned to not get fat? The answer, of course, lies with us. To begin with, we have allowed dogs that would have been too fat to survive in the wild to survive and reproduce. There is now a genetic predisposition to fatness in certain breeds than in others.
Dang.
He hits it hard.
Yeah, he does.
Perverse as it sounds, the housebound dog leads a stressed existence. It cannot express its natural behaviors: stalking, chasing, exploring, investigating. The brain endorphins might increase in states of anxiety and in some way be related to obesity. So he's saying that your dog that you just leave in the house all the time is actually stressed.
Yeah.
Why? Because it cannot express natural behavior. He says, regardless of the specific causes, most cases of obesity in dogs are owner-inspired. But there is one hormonal cause of obesity that is both important and controversial, and that is the influence of neutering on weight. So if you neuter your dog, a lot of times it can, their body won't be able to burn fat as well as it could have, so it can make them a little bit thicker. So you got to adjust their diet appropriately.
Yeah.
But obesity is not good for dogs. It's not good for us. It puts a lot of stress on the joints, put a lot of stress on the tendons, puts a lot more stress on your body itself, makes your body work harder to support itself. And as we'll talk about in one of our upcoming podcasts, that's specific to humans. But, having lower visceral fat's going to be better for you.
Yeah.
So anyway, something to keep in mind. You're going to have to pay attention to this. You're going to have to adapt your dog's diet and their exercise to keep them at a good, proper weight.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Give them the exercise they need.
Exactly.
And limit the food,
Exactly. I mean, that's the formula.
Yeah. Keep them healthy, so they can live longer. And they're not so stressed. Their body's not so stressed.
That's right. All right. Continuing on. He talks about over-submission, which I just wanted to highlight because I do get this question quite a bit. Very submissive dogs will often urinate when they are simply looked at, let alone touched. In these circumstances, avoid reaching down and stroking the dog from above and avoid intimidating eye-to-eye contact. Treatment involves enhancing the dog's self-esteem. Don't greet it when you come in, but rather let it settle and relax. Open the door, let it outside to urinate. Only when it is settled should you talk to it, and this is best done by getting down on its level and stroking it under the chin, a less intimidating position. So a lot of people ask me a question about my dog pees as soon as I get home, blah, 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 blah. And most of the time the answer is just ignore it. Don't greet it when you come home. Just walk it straight out to the yard, let it pee, and then after doing that for repetition, it'll stop,
right.
But a lot of people, they come home, hey, buddy, how's it going, blah, blah, blah. That can cause the dog to freak out. The dog oversubmits. They pee everywhere. Then the people are upset, which causes more fear response. So,
perpetual cycle.
Right. All right. Chapter 10, we're continuing with social behavior, but he's talking about fears, phobias, anxiety, excitement specifically in this chapter. He starts off with fear and says that we humans have the distinct advantage over all other animals and that we can talk about it. Imagine what a thunderstorm would be like if no one could tell you it wouldn't hurt us. The only way we would learn that thunderstorms aren't dangerous would be through habituation, through learning from experience that the noise would not harm us. This is the way that dogs must learn to control their fears. Remember, you can't communicate to them like we can communicate with each other.
Yeah, the it's okays. They're not ringing any bells for the dog.
Right. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. That's not helping you.
Yeah.
You know, but a lot of times with the thunderstorm specifically, we make the response worse than what it is because we know the storm's coming and we're like starting to freak out. We're starting to do all these different things. We have a ritual.
Yeah.
We have a ritual that our dog knows, like, oh, this means a scary thing's about to happen, you know, versus just making it like a normal thing.
Yeah, or just ignoring it completely.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, he says that pups that are deprived of normal exposure to common stimuli during their critical periods of development quite simply become fearful dogs when they mature. So again, he keeps hammering this, you know, expose your dog to as much as possible when they're young. All right. The next little section is anxiety. And he talked about this real quick. He said, if we deprive a dog of the opportunity to carry out his normal behavior, this can create a state of anxiety. So if we don't allow our dog to behave normally, this can create anxiety.
Right.
Restricting a dog to a life of luxury in a centrally heated home where he is fed like a king and allowed to sleep where he wants might sound like a recipe for canine contentment, but it still carries the seeds for anxiety for two main reasons. First of all, he is confined and this is unnatural for dogs. And second, he has to live with us, and although we are in many ways marvelous dog substitutes, we still unwittingly create conflicts in his mind.
Dog is a roamer. They like to roam.
They like to satisfy their instinctual needs.
Yeah.
You know, like we've been saying.
They like to explore, sniff, etc.
Anxiety can be created by the most inconspicuous of means. The dog is attached to his owner, permanently attached by early bonding, but is fearful of him because he gets smacked. The result is anxiety, a state of conflict which the dog shows by acting tentative or even barking at the approach of his owner. And he uses the example of like the owner that the dog's with, but also the owner that's smacking the dog. It doesn't have to be that dramatic.
Right.
You know, it could be a conflict that you don't think is very conflicting, but to your dog it is. Right. Saying one thing, expecting something else. Acting one way 1 second, acting another way a different second.
Yeah.
He even says conflict doesn't have to be dramatic as this. If a dog is treated inconsistently by members of the family, if one person lets him up on furniture and another reprimands him for getting on furniture, the conflict is obvious. I mean, that's a really good example.
Yeah.
Creates anxiety.
Be consistent.
Mm-hmm. And he says, excitement is not the only outlet for a dog's anxiety. And excitement could be like just spiking energy, you know? They can also indulge in what are called displacement activities, such as chewing through doors, stripping wallpaper, digging through the carpet. These are the displacement activities of the confined dogs. Anxious dogs might also behave in what can only be described as a neurotic fashion. They might chase their tails or physically act in any other strange but stereotyped manner. So displacement activity is where a dog just selects an activity to perform other than, you know, a desired activity. This can happen in training, and here we're talking about it with anxiety right now, you know?
Yeah.
He says, we know that pups raised in an emotionally or socially impoverished environment are more likely to grow up to become anxious, high-strung dogs. He says, prevention. The best prevention is to avoid breeding from dogs that are known to carry the genetic predisposition to produce fearful, excitable, anxious, and to gently expose pups during the early critical periods of their lives to as much sensory stimulation as possible. Behavioral problems will still occur, however. Separation anxiety, destructiveness, phobias, excessive barking, excitement when you or visitors come home, excitement in the car, and even fearful urination. All of these can have a learned component to them, and the larger the learned component, the more likely it will be that they can be successfully treated through counter conditioning. So, to dumb that down, the best prevention, make sure you select a good dog from a good litter, from a good mother, from a good breeder. If you have a mother or a father that has these problems, it's likely going to be in the puppies. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And then, again, once you have your puppy and before then with a good breeder, early critical sensory stimulation like we talked about, socialization. And then if you do have behavioral problems that occur, training.
Yeah.
Training to help those.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's basically with all the problems we've talked about, that seems to be the underlying prevention, treatment. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
All right, continuing on. He has a whole section in here about separation anxiety. But in this section, he says, many of the behaviors are self-rewarding. Chewing reduces tension. Physical activity does the same. Even urinating and defecating is self-rewarding because of the psychological effects these procedures have on the body. Many owners feel that their dogs are destructive in their absence, or urinate and defecate out of spite to get even for being left alone. This is not true. The dog's mind doesn't work that way. Quite simply, dogs are not capable of spitefulness. Dogs do not behave in these ways to get even with their owners. They don't act in these ways because of a lack of obedience or because they are dominant or out of boredom. They do so out of anxiety. So separation anxiety is just another form of regular anxiety. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And again, how do you prevent it? You do what we talked about. You provide that physical and mental stimulation. You fulfill their instinctual needs on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't get more simple than that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? All right, wrapping this chapter up, he says, the relationship owners have with their dogs affects the dog's behavior. Dogs whose owners are more anxious than normal are more likely to show anxiety or stress-related displacement activities, such as excessive barking or chewing. Dogs whose owners are emotionally attached to them are more likely to show dominance aggression. The neurotic owner, because of his own greater anxiety, is more likely to induce excitement and conflict in his dog by the way he behaves towards it. Neurotic owners are more likely to punish their dogs inconsistently in ways that are likely to increase the dog's state of conflict, which is their anxiety.
Yeah.
The more inconsistent you are, the more you're going to create anxiety in your dog. Many owners look upon their dogs as extensions of themselves. They project feelings that they personally find difficult to express in their own personalities onto their dogs. This can produce conflict in the dog's mind and consequent anxious behavior. It is we who are modifying the dog's mind, and we are unwittingly doing so because of our own vanities and insecurities. So again, it all comes down to us.
Yeah.
Dogs will teach us a lot about ourselves. They can teach us to be calmer if we're conscious about it. They can teach us to reduce our own anxiety through doing these types of things to reduce our dog's anxiety. But we have to be conscious about it. We have to want to take deliberate action.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
All comes full circle.
Right. All right, he's got a little section here about pack behavior. Social behavior in wolves is based, as has already been discussed, on a dominance-submission basis. A hierarchy develops and is maintained within the pack through ritual behavior. The dominant wolf shows confident posture, makes confident sounds, and marks his territory with confidence. He walks with stiff legs and high, moderately wagging tail. He sniffs nose to nose, then nose to genitals. The subdominant tag along in a contented fashion with more subdued behaviors, while the submissive perform ritual passive behaviors. Groveling with the head and tail down, crawling on the belly, trying to lick the lips of the dominant wolf. The super submissive might urinate in abject submission at the same time. So we've talked about that a little bit already.
Yeah.
But again, the pack has a hierarchy. The pack has a system. The pack has a structure. It's there for a reason, just like it is in our world, right?
Yeah.
So don't think of your dogs as not operating in that manner. You know, when they're living with us in our families, we need to simulate that. We need to have a structure, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, last chapter, chapter 13, kind of bringing it all in. The mind of the ill and the elderly, which we've already done a podcast on. Mm-hmm. So I only have a few highlights in this chapter. But we've kind of gone through the dog's life at this point. You know, we talked about puppies. We talked about prenatal. We talked about behavior. We talked about a lot of the stuff that's going on inside the dog and their brain.
Yeah.
Now the dog is reaching end of life, which will happen.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? He starts off by saying, the dog's mind is crafted by the information it receives. Any change in his ability to receive useful information and process it will affect his behavior. Both the aging process and illness interfere with sensory perception, hormone production, and the ability to communicate, all of which lead to sometimes dramatic changes in a dog's behavior. Memory decays in old dogs, and they do everything more slowly, including thinking. The onset of the aging process and speed of its progression varies quite dramatically from dog to dog. Right? You might have a 14-year-old dog that can operate just fine, whereas your neighbor might have an 8-year-old dog that is like old.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I do believe that everything leading up to this part in the book, if we're able to provide that early stimulation, socialization, we're able to provide their mental and physical exercise and meet their instinctual needs, it's setting them up for a good, long, healthy life.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Which is what we want.
Yeah. Continuing on, with age, the blood vessels of the brain lose their elasticity and the lungs become less efficient. Remember, the brain takes about 20% of the blood that the heart pumps out. The inefficiency of the blood vessels and lungs means that the brain becomes chronically starved of oxygen, and this has an effect on long-term memory. A consequence is that older dogs can become irritable when disturbed, can become slow to obey commands, and can ultimately have problems with orientation and learning. As your dog gets older, some of their behaviors are going to change. You have to take into account that age is going to play an effect on that. Maybe you have to modify some of your protocols.
Yeah.
The immediate conclusion is that healthy and active dogs will experience fewer or slower senile changes to the brain than will unhealthy and inactive dogs. Exercising your senses delays the natural deterioration of aging. So again, we talked about obesity earlier. That's not going to help you live longer and healthier.
Yeah.
Healthier and active dogs experience fewer or slower senile changes because your body's working.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Poor health and lack of mental and physical activity are controllable factors. We can alter the decay of memory by providing our dogs with mental stimulation. If we stimulate their minds, we can alter the aging process and make life more interesting for them in their latter years. The brain is built on instructions from genes, but is then modified by events through life. Even the ultimate behavior changes of aging can be altered by improving the dog's environment.
Yeah.
So again, it lies with us. If we really love our dogs and we want them to live a long, happy life, we're going to provide them mental, physical stimulation every day. We're going to meet their instinctual needs. We're going to modify things along the way that need to be modified. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're going to take care of them. We're going to give them a good diet, right? Those types of things.
Yeah.
All right, wrapping it all up. Last paragraph of the whole book kind of brings it all home. Because we have taken the dog into our homes and our hearts, we have the opportunity to observe his behavior more closely than we can observe any other animal species. This is a double-edged sword, for we often make the mistake of interpreting his behavior in human rather than canine terms. We forget his ancestry. In many ways, dog behavior is remarkably similar to human behavior, and we can probably learn something about ourselves by observing some of the untarnished activities of the dog's mind. The fact remains that the dog's mind works in its own specific ways and with objectives that are not necessarily obvious to us. By understanding these differences, we can become more responsible for our pets' behavior and at the same time make their lives more stimulating and fulfilling.
Boom.
That's it. That brings it all home.
Yeah. Bottom line, if you want your dog to live a long and healthy life, give them all their instinctual needs, meet them.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, yeah, this book covered so much information. Like we barely touched the wave tops of it, but it's 191 pages long. But I mean, this book is like a book that will last through time.
Yeah.
It's so relevant, even though there's some information that I think is a little bit not pertinent today, but the majority of it is, you know. And one of the things that he mentions in this last paragraph, how the dog's mind works in its own ways with objectives that are not necessarily obvious to us. Again, going back to your dog's doing things purposefully all the time. You might think that it's not, but it is, you know. So if you want, having the ability to learn what is your dog possibly doing, what is it probably doing, you know what I'm saying? I think that's important, especially if you have a dog that potentially is a problem. You know, I don't want to say a problem, but like dogs that have, you know, certain behaviors that can cause issues. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Versus a dog that has no issues, no problems. You don't ever have to do any type of oversight or anything for it. So anyway, definitely a lot of information to unpack. We covered the wave tops. I do recommend you get the book. You check it out if you want to learn more about it. Again, all of our trainers, all of our apprentices, they have to read this book, right? They have to do a book report on it. And then they get quizzed on it because the information is so powerful.
Yeah.
So anyway, hopefully you took something away from skimming the wave tops. There's always lessons that can be learned. And, you know, take it and use it as you will.
Pick up the book.
Pick up the book. Take the information and use it as you will, for sure. All right, before we wrap up, though, we're going to be talking about our sponsors. We're going to be talking about sponsors. The first one being Canine Revolution Dog Training. The best in the business, boys.
Yes, sir.
And you know they're the best because they're reading stuff like this and doing book reports on it to get their certification.
Above and beyond.
But well above and beyond.
Yeah.
And they're training the right way, too. You know, he said, you know, don't punish a fear-aggressive dog. Don't punish a dominant, aggressive dog. There's proper ways to do those things. So don't send your dog off to a trainer or don't work with a trainer that's trying to do that. You know, that's trying to provide corrections on day one. Yep. Not good. Not good. You know, you got to build a foundation, go from there, right? We're also sponsored by Canine Revolution Apparel, which we just got a brand new store on Amazon. If you haven't checked it out, you need to check it out.
Huh?
Yeah, brand new store because we finally got our trademark approved.
Oh, baby.
And we finally got Amazon approval on whatever. You know, Kelly runs the store.
Baby.
But yeah, it's good to go. It's good to go. So go on there, check out the new store, tell us what you think about it. Grab you a good to go shirt. Grab you a good to go hoodie because hoodie season is coming. It's hot right now. It's summertime, but it is coming.
Yeah.
Right? Grab you a guinea fowl shirt. Grab you a chicken shirt. Grab you a nice bitty shirt. Grab your rain jacket. Whatever you need.
Get a coffee cup.
Get a mug. Good to go. Canine Revolution Apparel. That's going to help support the podcast. It's going to help support you. Also, Origin USA Jocko Fuel.
Yep.
Right. This is how you're going to support America and yourself. Because all these products, whether it's Origin USA, boots, jeans, belts, gis, rash guards, RTX athletic gear, all the above, they just got their brand new field shorts. That's what I was wearing. That's what I was wearing at the walk.
Yeah, Chris was wearing his too.
Yeah, field shorts. They're in Raptor camo right now. But they're coming out in like solid colors here soon.
Yeah.
But those things are freaking nice.
Yeah.
Feels like athletic shorts, but it's got pockets. It's got the belt loops where you can put your belt on there. I mean, it's freaking nice.
Yeah,
they
do look good.
America.
They do look good.
Yeah, it's comfortable.
That's what you want in a short.
That's right. So that's the Origin USA side of the house. Then you got the Jocko Fuel side of the house, which is supplements for you. Supplements to help you.
Oh, yeah.
Made in America, sourced in America. You got your Jocko Milk, which is your protein powder.
Yep.
You got your Jocko Greens, which is all your micronutrients from your greens. You got the Jocko Creatine. You know? Definitely on that.
Oh.
You know?
Really?
Oh, definitely. Anyway, check that out. They have the new Jocko Time Or longevity supporter.
They got cookies, too.
They got malt cookies, protein cookies. How'd you know?
I follow Jocko.
Anyway, you can use promo code SINGER101 for 10% off at Origin USA and Jocko Fuel. That's the only place I buy stuff now.
I know.
Only supplements because I want to support America.
Yeah.
The only clothes I buy other than Canine Revolution apparel is Origin USA.
Lives and breathes the brand.
Lives and breathes America is what I'm doing. All right. Also, in about a month from this recording, which is in July of 2023, myself, Chad, Aaron, one of our trainers, and Jake were all swimming for the Hallie Hill Swimming Fundraiser. 200 animals at Hallie Hill Animal Sanctuary, 200 laps.
Yep.
No joke.
That ain't no joke.
So if you want to support, you can donate at the link in the description below, and you can sponsor either me, Aaron, or Jake, or all three of us, and help us achieve our goal of raising funds for the animals at Hallie Hill Animal Sanctuary. And an animal sanctuary is different from like a rescue, because Hallie Hill does allow dogs and animals to be adopted out, but if the dogs can't be adopted, maybe they're red zone dogs, super aggressive dogs or whatever.
Right.
Maybe they're super old dogs. They can live at Hallie Hill. They can live a good life there for the rest of their lives. They don't get put to sleep or anything like that. And they get taken care of.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what makes Hallie Hill different from anywhere else. Animal Sanctuary. That's why we swim for them, So check that out if you're interested in donating to that, supporting a good cause. Also, we got our Canine Revolution Dog Training NFT digital certificates. This is launching August 1st, which is currently July 2023. So we've got about 15 days until launch.
It's coming up.
It's coming up quick. So you want to jump on that, be ready for it. But this is a digital certificate. You'll store it on your phone, and basically you'll have perks with local businesses. We got DT Mobile Detailing, who's David, U.S. Marine Corps veteran. He can detail your car, get in ship shape for you.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Get it squared away. We got Sharpshooter Pressure Wash, owned by technically trainer Chris
I always
Tipton.
say technically.
Technically, it's his brother. Technically, it's Chris's brother, Josh.
I mean, I think it just is.
You get some perks. You get some perks with him. And again, you could pressure wash your house yourself. Why would you do that? Because you're not a house pressure washer. You're not trained to hit every detail properly.
Yeah.
Plus you don't have the sharpshooter gear. I mean, he's got a whole trailer. He's got these big hoses. He reels them out.
He's got the ladder, the chemicals, the proper chemicals you need to get the cleaned up.
And I mean, the price you're going to pay him is like more cost effective than going out and trying to get all your own stuff.
No need to sweat outside.
And no need to, you can sit inside and watch them.
Yeah,
you can sit inside and watch them.
Yeah, you can actually. That's what I did.
All right. Next up, All Is Well in Somerville. All Is Well Pets. Again, they got the holistic support for your dog.
Oh, yeah.
All the nutritional things you need. Food, allergy test. Did you do yours? You got the results back?
Waiting for them to come back.
Waiting for the results. They got grooming. They got a dog wash there. They got everything you need. So they're part of the program. Definitely good to go, right? Only place I get my food from.
Yep.
All right, we got Bob with Carolina Premier Inspections and Pest Control. We've had him on the podcast.
He's good to go.
He's good to go. But if you need your new home inspected, if you need a home that you're buying inspected, if you need your apartment, townhome inspected, he can do that. He'll let you know. He'll find what's going on. He'll give you a full report. Or if you're like me, you've been in your home for a while, you want to make sure you're staying on top of the maintenance for it, you can have him come out every so often, do an inspection, make sure that you know what you need to be doing with it, right? Then you got the pest control side of the house where, hey, you got your chickens in your yard, you got your guinea fowl in your yard, keeping the perimeter up out there, but you got to keep that termite perimeter.
Yeah.
You know what he said about the termites? They can cause havoc.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You got to keep that interior perimeter, the ants, the spiders, right? Keep the interior perimeter set. You're going to need Carolina Premier Pest Control. That's where Bob and his team and Eric come in. So good to go with that.
Help me with my ants.
Definitely. You had some ant problems.
I had some ant problems. They took care of it.
Oh, yeah. Real quick, too.
Oh, yeah.
Real quick. All right, next up, we got the Velasquez Company. That's Antonio and his crew. They do painting. They do drywall repair. They've done all of our fencing. A lot of fencing.
Yep.
A lot of fencing. A lot of painting.
A lot of land to cover.
They get it done.
Oh, yeah.
Antonio's a get after it type of guy, too.
Yeah, he is.
You know what I'm saying? So check that out. He'll support you guys. Also, Black Forest MMA Dwight, we've done a podcast with him. He's the owner.
Oh, yeah.
But if you want to learn self-defense, if you want to get in shape, you can go down to Black Force MMA in Ladson. They're going to give you some perks for being part of the program. Also, Cane Bay Chiropractic. Get your spine in check. Get your nervous system in check.
Get cracked.
Right? Doc Anthony, he's going to help you out. Had a guy, one of my buddies at the gym the other day, had a rough weekend. I don't know what happened, but he came to the gym hobbling. I said, what the hell's going on? And he's a foreign guy, but he said something happened with his back. I said, you got a chiropractor? He said, he's tried this guy, tried that guy. I said, I'm going to send you to my guy. So send him over to Doc Anthony. He's good to go.
Yeah.
No factor.
Hell yeah.
Also, Doc Anthony has Lanzera Defense Strategies, which is his CWP defensive pistol courses. And you can take his courses and learn, right? And he's trained with, in the past, he's trained with Tier 1 groups, right?
Oh, yeah.
He's trained with them. He's taught them. So he's taken that knowledge. He's applied it now on his civilian scale. He'll also train with certain entities as well. You have to set that up with him. But Lanzera Defense Strategy is going to give you some perks for being part of the program. And we're working on some more options as well. If you are a local business and you want to get involved in our program, let us know. Email me, Chad Singer at caninerevolutiondogtraining.com, and we can get you involved. Also, recently on the Pack Talk Podcast YouTube, me and Ben went to an event. I was a guest speaker, and we posted that speech on YouTube. Talked about discipline, talked about freedom, talked about finances. What else did we talk about? Time.
Talked about, time management.
A lot of stuff. A lot of stuff juiced into like an hour.
Investments.
Finances.
Yeah.
All the above. So if you want to hear that speech, you can go to our YouTube, Pack Talk Podcast YouTube channel. You can listen to that. Achieving Freedom is what we called it. If you need a guest speaker at your event and you want me to come, email me, Chad Singer at caninerevolutiondogtraining.com. We can get you on the schedule. Also, if you're a business owner or a dog trainer, maybe you need a coach, maybe you need a consultant, maybe you need someone to talk to, you can email me, Chad Singer at caninerevolutiondogtraining.com. We can set that up. Also, our team recently did a big event, Walk for the Fallen, hosted by nonprofit Grappling PTSD, which is also owned by the owner of Black Force MMA Gym, Dwight Decker, who's a Navy veteran, supports veterans. His nonprofit Grappling PTSD, he was telling some of the stories the other day, providing wheelchairs to veterans when the VA wasn't able to, providing lifts for veterans to get their wheelchairs in and out of their car when the VA wasn't able to, getting them rehab, getting them taken care of when, they had no other hope, providing food to veterans, homeless veterans, right? Providing gifts to their children. So, they do a lot, you know, and that's a big community. So every year he hosts a Walk for the Fallen, which is a 30-mile walk, which you don't really understand what that is until you actually do it. We all underestimated it.
Yeah, yeah, we did.
We're like, hey, we're walking dogs all day. We'll be good.
Yeah, you think. I don't think anything could prepare you for that.
That was painful. But it was
extremely painful.
It was pain that needed to be earned for the fallen,
Yeah.
So he does that every year. And you walk basically from Summerville, South Carolina to Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. If you want to be involved in it next year, pay attention to his pages and wait for the Walk for the Fallen 2024. But that's just a way for them to raise money so that they can support veterans. That's why they do it. We're honoring the fallen. We're also raising money to support veterans. So if you want to support his organization and support veterans, you can look up Grappling PTSD. You can donate to it. If you want to reach out to them, they have their own Instagram, Facebook. You can also reach out to Black Force MMA, Instagram, Facebook, and you'll be in touch with Dwight himself.
Yep.
Who was on a podcast with us as well. Like 6 hours or something. With his life story.
It's like 5, yeah.
So good to go, right? And last but not least, just want to say thank you to our military. You guys are out there. You guys are, defending our freedom. You guys are sacrificing. Your families are sacrificing. So we want to thank you guys. If you guys need dog training, reach out to us so we can take care of you. First responders, same thing. The thing about military is when they deploy, generally they're deploying overseas. What most people forget is when first responders go on duty, when they deploy, they do so in their own community, which can be extremely challenging. Could you imagine being a cop, pulling over someone for a DUI, arresting them, and then seeing them in Walmart a couple days later, when you're off duty? That's crazy.
Yeah.
And that can add a whole nother level of stress to yourself and your family.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? So thank you to the first responders out there. If you guys need dog training, let us know. We're here to support you. Teachers too. A lot of people don't thank teachers enough, but literally raising the next generation, helping to raise the next generation, right? You shouldn't leave raising your kids in your teacher's hands, but they're an important part of your tribe, of your family, of your community. They need to be taken care of. Yeah. They're teaching our kids how to read, how to write, all these different types of things. So thank you to the teachers out there. If you guys need dog training, please let us know. If you need someone to come talk to a class, please let us know. Be honored to help out for all you guys do. So with that being said, appreciate you guys listening. If you have feedback, please let us know. We do take that into account. We do pay attention to all comments as much as possible. The only comments that we sometimes get lost on are the Facebook ones because there's a lot of back and forth going on the Facebook.
Yeah. Nonstop.
But the Instagram, YouTube, the emails, we're on top of those. Please rate us. Please subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting platform. That helps us reach new people. Please let us know what you want to hear us talk about in the future because we're here to serve you, and hopefully the information we're putting out you're finding of value, right? But don't forget, grab you a Jocko Go. I already had a 50-50 tactical today. We got this pink mist I brought for Ben, but he was drinking a frickin' Monster, so I guess I'm taking this home. So anyway, good to go with that. Get on Jocko Fuel if you need them. But until next time, this is Pack Talk Podcast.